What's that?
I said, that was a race back from Manchester.
Yeah.
I got out of there at like 4:30.
Traffic is wicked,
It
28
is,
traffic.
yeah.
Crazy.
Did you eat? Did you eat?
No, no, it's no time for that. Sometime around 9:30.
I even got an allergy shot in between.
MS4, I don't even know.
And you weren't here.
Huh?
Look at all you did today, and you weren't here. All right, the little red light is on, so I believe we're live now. So at that point, I am going to convene the Durham Budget Committee meeting of November 15th, 2017. The time being 6:11 p.m. Sorry for the delay. We are all just coming back from different events and activities. We do have a quorum of the board, and at some point we believe that Mark Sullivan will be joining us via the telephone, which is a legal option for us to exercise to allow a budget committee member to participate, because we do have a quorum of the board. I also am aware that we have Ellen Phillips will be joining us in about an hour or so. She had another activity that she had to take care of before coming here tonight. So for the record and those present, just go around the table. Swens, why don't we begin with you tonight?
Sure, it's because I was checking my messages. David Swenson, Select Board Representative to the Budget Committee.
I'm Terry Jarvis, Vice Chair of the Budget Committee.
Kathy Rolowitz, Chair.
Scott Kimman, Town Administrator.
Dave, should go remember.
And Anita is here supporting us
Finance.
with finance, and we do have representation from the fire department here at this point. We have received minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review them enough to take action? Okay. Any amendments or?
You've already said two.
Right. For the record, two that I would like to have taken care of is under the list of presence people. Those should be listed as excused absences and not just absence, because they were excused.
Yep.
And it is important for that distinction, for our attendance to be reflected accurately. Ms. Swen.
I have two or three other suggested changes on page 2.
Okay.
I have one minor one on page 1.
Oh, is that it?
Under budget review, building inspection, the 4th line down, it says as fire chief. I believe it should say as the fire chief. He's kind of like out there wandering by himself. That was all I had.
While you're on that, I think the title of the account is actually Code Enforcement, right? Code Enforcement Officer. Double check the exact name.
Building Inspector, Code Enforcement.
Is it the building
Officer.
inspector? Was a reference to the fact that
Yes,
the fire
inspect,
chief used
if
to-
it is inspector, it's still inspector, not inspection.
Okay, inspector.
I
And
was
it's
looking what the official
CEO,
title was
code,
here.
yeah, it's CEO, Code Enforcement Officer, right?
We had building inspection as the account title on the spreadsheet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's why.
I'll put code enforcement as well.
Yeah.
building
I
inspection.
usually just do BI, CEO,
Terry,
slash.
I apologize, Terry, I didn't see where your suggested change was.
Under the same paragraph, Swen's, 4th line down,
Yeah.
the sentence begins with as.
Yeah.
Insert the after the word as the fire chief.
Okay.
Anything
Yeah, on
on
page 2,
page
I do
2?
have, in the middle of the page, under account 4312, the second paragraph, second line. I would prefer to cross out the word guys and you put in person. Or 2 people, either one, but 2 people short. It's not necessarily
Sorry,
guys.
I don't even see it.
middle of the page under 4312, second paragraph, second line.
Okay.
The
All
second
right,
line.
I got it now, thank you.
Okay. And
Personnel.
then the next line down, individuals are higher than his current employees, rather than guys again. Again, it's from a legal perspective, I think it's a preferred term.
I think it's more respectful, yeah.
Yeah, that's my point. There, again, minor stuff here. I think in two instances, one on page 2 and one on page 3, they put your name together as Chair Robles. It may be, you know, a uniform name now, I don't know, but there is a space, I think, between, again, very minor, and that's,
I think sometimes.
that's under 4210.
I think
First-
sometimes I speak that way.
First paragraph under 4210, you know, there's just, it's a space.
Oh,
But I do want to comment about 3 lines up from the bottom. I know you were the one that had the question, but I think you were reading it from another member on the canine costs.
Yes, that should reflect that those are Jones Swenson.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
correct, Chair Orwitz via email from the other member, that would be John Swenson.
Yeah,
Same with anything
Mrs.
from-
Swenson was the one who asked those questions.
Just say via email from Jay Swenson.
Whereabouts was it? again?
Third line up from the bottom on that page 2, on the far right side.
Yep,
Starts with,
Just after Chair Orwitz, just say via email from
Jim Swenson.
John Swenson.
okay, so insert after Chair
yeah,
Horowitz
via email.
via email from Joan.
Right.
Yeah.
Hi, Mark, this is Anina calling with the town of New
And then on
Durham.
page 3,
Hi, is it okay if I put you on
1, 2,
speaker?
3, fourth line down, starts with town, pardon, yep. The point, and specifically, was not that it would be a part-time, it would be the equivalent of. So add the words after having, put in the equivalent of.
I've lost it.
Fourth line down, starts with town.
Yeah,
Town can accept having the equivalent of a part-time, blah, blah, blah.
Having an,
Having the equivalent of a,
part-time.
just put in the equivalent of after having,
the equivalent,
of.
Yep.
And then the rest of it, whatever. And again, the run together of your name, the third line up from the bottom of that same paragraph.
yep, space.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty minor,
Page 2, under 4312,
but under what?
4312, 1, 2, 3, the fourth line down. I wasn't here, so I don't, the sentence reads, it was noted an application has since received, and they will be interviewing to fill the part-time position.
Should be done, has since been received.
It was noted an application for what? Is it an application for part-time position, a full-time position?
That was,
it's kinda
The
like
subject
any-
is the contract mowing, so that's what,
So it's for an
References to
application
that.
for the
Yeah.
contract mowing has been received?
not so much for the position that would cover that task.
It's kinda left
Yeah,
it-
It should be since been received.
Yeah, add the word then,
It was noted that an application has since been received.
What an application.
And it's the abbreviation is, well, or you can go with facilities and grounds maintainer position.
yeah, which you can add, yeah.
okay. Anything else? And with that, I will entertain a motion.
So Mark's on the phone, right?
Mark's on the phone.
Oh.
Can you hear us, Mark?
Partially, but I'm okay, Scott.
Okay, thank you. We're just
Same.
going over the minutes. Which you don't have, but,
Well,
sorry.
Okay.
Dave, would you be
Up.
post?
Yeah, I move we accept the minutes from, November 8th, as amended.
Again, I'm gonna be a little picky here, versus accept versus approve. Okay. I'll second that.
Okay. So I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 8th, made by Dave Segori, been seconded by Selectman Swens. Any further discussion? Being none, do I have any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
I don't think I haven't seen them yet.
And you're going to abstain too as well?
Yep.
Okay. Mark and Terry abstain. Okay, but I still have a quorum, so I can still go forward. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion is 3 in favor, 1 abstention, and 0 against.
2 extensions.
2 extensions.
2 abstentions, excuse me. Okay, thank you. First account that we will be talking of is account 4220, the fire department. And we do have Chief Barney and some of his other support groups with him.
Milfoil?
Oh, no, let me go upstairs. All space being utilized.
I guess that's a good thing.
All right, what we've been doing, Chief is just going through the larger ticket items, speaking to whatever line you'd like to, throughout the budget. I mean, we don't have to skip every line, but when we get to some of the salary, like Medicaid and all of that stuff, we don't have any control over those numbers, so we haven't been spending a lot of time on that.
Understandable.
Okay, so I will let you walk us through, and we may ask you a question as we go along.
Okay, do you wanna hit the ones that are increases only, or do you wanna go through them all?
What would the committee like to do?
I have a couple of questions, and they're not necessarily on items with increases.
Yeah.
So I can either do those accounts as we hit them, or,
Yeah, so just go through the lines.
So don't let me go by them and speak up, Terry, if
Yep.
I'm gonna jump over them. So we'll go down to fire department secretarial position. There's an increase on that one. If you looked at, I had given justifications out for that position. You'll see it's quite extensive, and that list is just growing continuously. The administrative day position, you should have one there, the secretarial one too. Let's see. Okay, the secretarial day position is for, that one's not as extensive as I thought the other one was. That one is whoever, it could be Mike, it could be Neil, it could be Dave Stewart, it could be anybody that's doing administrative work in the process of doing their duties in the department, particularly Neil in maintenance. All of that is entered into, all of truck maintenance and everything now is entered into our firehouse program, so that we track all the costs. Actually, he's actually doing another one. We're doing two separate programs right now, so we can track costs and the actual work being done. One is Firehouse and the other one is QuickBooks. QuickBooks is tracking all the costs for every truck. So we can pull up every year what that truck cost us to maintain, or we can do it in 10-year intervals, whatever, whatever we want, once we get that in. So all of that kind of work is ends up over onto the part-time secretarial position, because that's not designated to any one particular person. So that gets spread out amongst, Dave Stewart does, he does Tempsys, quality Q&A, and he goes through that, so that takes some time up, that gets built off onto that line. And there's stuff like that. Now, there's oversight on that, and that is in the, so that's just increasing us all the time, just because we've, I argued, I thought all these computer programs are gonna save us time. They don't. It takes a lot of time to enter in the data, but what it does do, it gives us a lot better data at the end of the year, or at the end of 3, 4 years, whatever, we can pull. The amount of data is there, and it's something we never had before. Before it was always speculation, we just went off the bottom lines of different things, we didn't actually know sometimes what was being done. So I couldn't provide that information to you, the board, or the board of selectmen, because it was hard to put it all together without a program. So a lot more information is available. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, because we get a lot more information asked from us, but that's okay, because everybody should know it.
That's
It keeps
right.
everybody above board.
Everyone should be informed.
That's right.
Yeah.
So those costs, that's probably one of our largest increases this year, and in our payroll line, that in that we do a lot more on, I used to just call somebody and have them fix a truck. Now, we do a lot of, we get pricing ahead of time. That takes time. Somebody has to call on the phone, find out what we need to get done, where's the best place to send it, what's the cheapest place. I mean, I shouldn't say cheapest.
Least expensive.
Least expensive place to send.
Cheap enough for quality.
It takes, that takes a lot of time to do that, so that gets built up into that administrative time too. The secretarial assistant time, because that's a secretarial assistant to sometimes themselves.
So basically what you're saying is this is no one particular individual, this is many people that
Absolutely, yes.
happen to be doing what you would deem secretarial work.
Yeah, and we could break that line up, but poor Nina doesn't want any more line numbers to deal with the payroll, because we have so many.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's why I hesitated to break that up into a more finite record for you.
Chief,
Yes.
taking that line as a whole,
Yeah.
okay. Looking at your expenditures to date, roughly, November 9th of 2016 was 4196. You're almost identical this year.
Yeah.
Excuse me, 4193. This year is 4196. Extrapolating out that 4196 to the rest of the year brings you over a little bit over 5,000. How do you justify
Because-
the additional 3,000?
Because this is probably my mistake, because in order to try to keep up the payroll, I was trying to balance all the lines over the year. So we have some maintenance money that's moved to other lines to try to keep them going over budget, and we've got training money that's moved to lines to keep them going over budget. Most of them all have been moved to cover some of the payroll lines, so that we don't, I have to stick to the bottom line, I don't necessarily have to stick to the individual lines. So in this program, there's no way to track when we move that. That's something we gotta look at, but I can say I took so many dollars out of another account, like his maintenance account. He loses some money in his maintenance account to cover payroll or something, so that's why.
Are we over,
But
that we
that-
have to make those decisions?
We are definitely gonna be over on payroll.
But clarification from the finance point of view, if the bill comes in for compensation for this particular line, 115, even if the chief is deducting the money from, say, radio equipment, 631, you still would put the cost factor in 115 compensation, correct?
If it's payroll, yes, you
Yeah.
would.
So the actual, regardless of where you're adjusting to keep your bottom line,
Yeah,
the actual expenditure to date is 4196.
except in the payroll lines.
I
This
believe,
is in the I'm looking at the 115.
but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, chief, that we had some of the funds were put into a different, were misallocated to a different payroll line earlier
That's
in the
right,
year.
that's what I'm saying. If I can move money around inside the payroll lines, and she doesn't, it depends on how we code it, how she builds it.
So they send me a list of what they do. It's
Mhm.
broken out in different line items. And so if he says to code it to something, I do that.
Yeah.
So they moved it on their end and I'm not aware of this.
So then this,
And that's the problem.
4196 might not be an accurate compensation number for that line?
I think maybe what you want to look at is both lines, 110 and 115.
Combine them. There's, what's this, 1, 2, 3 payroll lines.
So 110,
Actually, the 115 line, and then there's,
115.
The 115 is what I'm looking at.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah,
suggesting,
but I'm getting
To-
very
to-
confused because I keep hearing of a 149 or something number, and I don't see that number, so I don't know where you're getting
And
at,
the
Terry.
That's
number I got, the 4196, I
it's a year-to-date number, I
off of
think.
the
Year-to-date.
October 31st expenditures to date.
Okay.
Because
That's what was throwing me,
years.
I'm like, where are they seeing
Yeah.
these numbers?
we found, when Peter and I went through, I asked Peter to go back through the firehouse program and see if he could identify which ones had been charged to the other general fire suppression account. I think it was about 1,100. You'll see, I don't know if you, on your printout, whether you see it over on the year-to-date column there, I put it at 1,100. typed in there, you may have an older version. It's in red. $1,100, that's what, when I added it up, that's what it came out to, that we figured. So whatever that, you got 4193, and then there's another $1,100, because we haven't made any changes on our.
What was the date for the 4193?
End of October.
Oh,
And,
yeah,
October
October.
31st, I think.
This is 11/2, and it says 2556.
Yeah, it's actually 9 something, because it's on the bottom there. So end of September is the numbers that you have in your year-to-date here.
So I guess I'm still not clear, because I don't see, based on the October, end of October printout, I don't see where we were really at risk of any of the salary lines being over, so I don't understand why salary was being taken from some other line.
Sorry, I don't interrupt. There is another compensation line later on. It's not in the same categories these are, but it is still wages and those kinds of activities. It's quite a bit farther down. I think these activities are more directly related to an administrative function.
Correct.
Within the department, as opposed to training, on-call, that kind of stuff, where they go to a site and fight a fire, etc. That's later on.
But what I'm trying to do is to get to a point to understand why there was a request for $8,000, and then I want to hear from the selectmen's representative as to why they decided at 5,000. I'm trying to get to that point, but I don't.
The administrative time, the day-to-day things that it takes to run the department are increasing on a regular basis.
But how do you know this if we're not
Because-
tracking it accurately by line item? Because that's what I thought I was hearing.
Because I'm on salary, so mine's not tracked. The time I put in over there, and TA I'm usually there 4 days a week.
Mhm.
You definitely did more.
Yeah, I
So those hours don't get tracked.
Okay.
So I'm picking up the load because these guys just run out of time, period. Even if we had more money, I don't know that he has more time, or the
So
other guys.
you're
have more
trying to compensate for the tasks that you've done, to
What
give it to them?
what I'm trying to do is show a cost that, yeah, I can do a lot of my duties, but when I do a lot of administrative work and I do all the runs, that I try to cut back on some of the medical runs, but it's hard when I hear they've got working codes or they're going. I go out on as many runs as I think I need to, which is probably 80%, 90%.
Yeah, about that.
Those hours aren't tracked anywhere. Those are all untracked hours.
Okay.
So if I said, being in the salary position, if I take those hours and I put them into a salary position, all of that administrative goes away. And I don't do that. So I still put in the office time on the administrative hours to help these guys out. But the true cost of the town, if I'm gonna go to all these calls, I'd like to cut back on some of my office hours so that I could go to all the calls. And I go in, but the new chief, another chief might not. And you guys wanna see, I got your thinking on your actual costs on budgeting. And the only way I can do those actual costs is to track my time, but I think I can give you a readout of all of my hours if you would, because we do track that.
But as a
But I don't-
salaried employee, your number of hours, you could have a week that's 10 hours, or you could have a week that's 50
No.
hours as a
I'm
salaried
here,
employee.
I'm here Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays, all the time. That's my salaried hours, that covers that. Any other time I put in, I don't take Saturdays off, I don't take Fridays off, I don't.
I think
Because
what,
people expect me to be there, I have people come in all the time and want to talk to me.
It's just, I could certainly justify going from 5,200 to 6,000. I don't have the data yet to justify jumping this particular account by $2,800.
Yeah.
Maybe next, with more accuracy, we could certainly, maybe next year. If I'm gonna approve it, I need something to justify it.
Yeah, understandable.
Anita, did you have something you wanted to add?
well, I think what the chief is trying to say is that he is doing administrative functions that he
And
shouldn't
that's
be
what I
doing
was trying to get to.
in
And
his
if he
position.
wasn't doing them, that would fall to who they were going
And
to
they would
have
be
as
overexpended.
the secretary tasks.
Right.
Would be picked up by, and as he said, it's a group of people that are covering that function, but we really don't have a true feel to what that number is. So maybe for next cycle, we should
Yeah,
have,
I can, because I track my hours anyway. We do track them file, just so that we know the numbers. I can pull those. Mike doesn't pull them because I don't get paid since the salary thing, so he's, I think
but
he's.
that would have been good
information.
information to have to try to justify a request of the $8,000. And again, I'm not trying to be picky, I was just trying to understand the reason for the request, and then now I'd like to hear from Swen's as to how the selectmen got to their 5,000, please.
I mean, we went through very similar
Discussion.
analysis, discussion as what you just described, and came up with the same conclusion that based on the information we had, we didn't see how you could get to $8,000. I had originally suggested 4,000, and after discussion, we came up with 5,000 based on input from the select board as a whole. Because two things there, one is what we've just described, two is if you look at, actually three things, two is if you looked at year-to-date, which was annualized, we did this probably about 3 weeks ago, a month ago, so perhaps at the end of September, but still if you annualized it, it was still in the $4,000 to $5,000 or less range. And then we looked at the prior year, i.e. 2016 budget, and said, okay, $5,000 still is in line with all of those pieces of rationale that we had, and that's where we came up with that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Mark, did you have any questions?
No, it's been a couple of ones I have no problem.
I didn't hear
It's all
it.
set.
Oh, you're all set, okay. Right, thank you, Chief. Next, please. Any questions on dispatch services?
That's the number they're giving you for 2018?
I don't have a solid number from them yet. I'm just anticipating that there will be a small increase. There may not be, I'm not sure. I talked with Sarah 3 weeks ago, and they hadn't finalized it. This is just a maintenance contract number that they have. We don't, technically dispatch center is covered under the county taxes, but they have maintenance, all the new radio equipment, that stuff, they cover under this, and they just did a big expansion down there. So I don't know what, they haven't got all the numbers together yet, but she told me, you know, there'll probably be a small increase, so.
Is this a one-time fee per year, or is it twice a year, or how often?
Once a year, this covers dispatch for the year.
So the 2,300 year-to-date was it for this year?
I believe it was.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
So,
No, because that also covers item responding, which has not been paid yet.
okay.
So item responding is an additional
Yeah, if you look on
$900.
it,
900
it's
for
traffic.
I am responding?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
he said 900.
900
No.
for I am
Annual.
responding.
Annually, yeah, that
That's
gets
about
paid.
3,200, so we're still
Yeah.
still good.
But that's a fixed cost, we know that, they haven't changed that on us, so.
Now, when you say maintenance for radio, do we have separate radios?
That's radio
That
maintenance,
are
but
here?
that we own, this is radios.
This
that
is our
Stratford County
dispatch. So Stratford County charges us a fee
To
to
maintain
maintain the
their-
equipment that they have. The actual dispatch center is covered by county taxes, but each department that utilizes Stratford County pays a maintenance fee every year. It's usually a fixed fee.
Because not every town.
That's fine, I'm good, go
Yeah.
on.
Not every town in Stratford County uses fire dispatch, only a few, so those few get charged for that.
I just wanted to understand if their radios were here or if we're paying for them,
on the
and you've
mountain.
explained it, so good, thank you.
They're in a mountain somewhere.
Right.
Okay,
Vehicle maintenance.
Pardon?
so,
I'm just talking to myself.
We up to vehicle maintenance?
We skipped over fuel. The fuel had an increase.
Well, I had, yeah.
the fuel increase, yeah.
Yeah,
Is it 10,635?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
10,635, yep,
10,635.
page 2.
We're switching from oil to LP.
I want to come back to something after we do that.
Okay. I have no idea at this point what the LP is gonna be. for that building.
No, this is vehicle.
That's vehicle.
This isn't, yeah, that's not included in this.
There's a
Okay.
vehicle fuel.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
you budgeted 1,100 gallons of gasoline at $2.50, which is,
Yeah, that,
corresponds with, all the other
departments.
departments, and then diesel at $3 a gallon, and you're projecting 10,000. And when I look back on my records, it's the same request. The figures I'm seeing are pretty much jiving with what your usage is and everything, so I didn't have any.
well, that fuel cost hasn't changed much at all. As a matter of fact, do you anticipate a fuel increase this year on that, or did you?
I mean, we adjusted these based upon, because we're out of contract now.
Yeah, that's what I
Because
thought.
we were paying a lot more for diesel, because they had a issue with the contract a couple of years ago where they had estimated a higher quantity than what was being used per year. So we had to wait to expire that contract. It has expired now. So now we only pay 7 or 8 cents over rack. And the meter, I think, has the usage as of a few weeks ago.
Our usage hasn't changed much, it's just that.
What's that?
Our usage doesn't change that much over the years, just
Pretty consistent.
cost per.
Total
gallon.
gallons of gasoline, 626 gallons. For diesel, 750 gallons. And the diesel rate is actually $2.75.
Right now.
Is what
Right
Karen
now,
said.
but we budgeted at 3.
Yeah, I carried it at 3 and
If you look at the November 9th, 16 expenditure year-to-date and the 2017 expenditure year-to-date, they're almost identical.
That line, we don't touch at all, that's there for Scott. If he needs it in the highway department, he can move up the diesel, it's just cost, fuel costs, so, for the town. So, I mean, we don't plan on, I don't spend that money at all, that's just there to cover the fuel costs.
Okay, can we go back to?
Go back to 622, software maintenance. As of the October report, you had spent 2931. Let me double check that number. for
Software maintenance.
Yeah, I think you're correct.
Um,
We've actually already spent more this year than we're budgeting for next year.
That kind of leaps out at me.
Yeah, well, we'll tell you why, we're dropping one of those. We're dropping e-dispatch.
What is e-dispatch?
E-dispatch is the one that comes over our phones, so we don't
Okay.
have to carry the pages. And because we picked up I Am Responding up here, we're actually dropping e-dispatch and,
We're actually gonna be dropping we dropped e-dispatch and I'm responding in exchange for
Who's Responding.
replacing
okay,
both.
that one program does what both programs did,
Okay.
for less money.
How much did e-dispatch cost you this year?
Oh, $700.
So that would bring you down to 22. So you're
It's
still spending more than you are asking for.
It's who's, what did you say?
Who's responding?
That's a much better program.
I'm trying to think what else we did this year with software that,
Do computer things,
yeah, I don't remember any of what else we did.
the laptop that we
Laptop you replaced, but that's under a different
use,
line.
a different line.
Because at this time in 2016, you'd only spent 1584.
Which is more per usual for us.
And
So Terry, we had an anomaly this year that, and I wish I could tell you what it was, because I'm drawing a
I
blank.
think I know what it was, I
Was
think
that-
it was a late billing. I think one of 2016's was, because we get these at the end of the year. I think you got one
It
of,
pushed over from 16 to
onto
17.
this year, so I don't think that, what you see there is actually this year's cost. There's one bill in there from last year on the e-dispatch.
so it was a 2016 bill that was paid with 2017 funds?
The reality of it is we normally can do it.
That happened a couple of times this year, yes.
Doesn't
So,
happen anymore.
so what you see in there,
You
I
got
wouldn't
there,
see,
Scott.
because I would have had that bill, I would have had that on 2016's. And it actually physically got taken off in 2017.
So what's been actually, the detailed report shows in February we paid e-dispatch, which is half the annual at $774, and then firehouse software contract, that was in February, $915. And then in October 2nd was emergency
Reporting,
reporting.
which
fire
will,
package
which will
setup.
replace firehouse going forward, so that's why that'll fall back into line.
How much was that one?
I'm sorry.
$1,242.
You had to run them simultaneously.
Mhm.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, firehouse gets paid for the year,
In order to get, they can actually take the information and make them.
and we had setup fees with, when we subscribed to who's reporting, there were initial setup fees to bring data over and stuff like that, so that's why that's up this year.
So you feel
a
comfortable with the
one-time.
1,800?
Yes, I do.
Because you won't have that next year.
No, I won't have the setup fee, so, and then that was considerable.
That's what I thought.
We're trying to cut down on, the programs are nice, but we're trying to cut down on them because they take a lot of time to administer. So we're trying to find one program that does what two we did. And we're doing pretty good.
And then 631, you're asking $3,000. This time in 2016, you'd spent 227. This year, you've spent 611. Why do you need another $2,500?
Actually, we're about to pay another bill that's gonna take that for new portables we had to replace, which is gonna bring that right up to the $3,000 for the year. That bill will be in this week. So,
We still
so
do
unfortunately for us at budget time now, is that we sit on most of our money all year long as much as we can in case of something that we can't foresee. So, like, we budgeted to replace a couple of radios, but we didn't do it until this past month, making sure that we were still gonna have the money in our budget.
What's that gonna run you?
$2,800. That was a deal. That was a lot of shopping in a deal. That's two molds, portables. But there's still quite a bit of things that we budgeted for last year that we have not purchased yet this year. So this kind of comes up every year with us at this time because we're showing all this extra money sitting in the accounts, and it's just because we held on to it in case.
If I lose a pump, Terry, a pump will cost me a minimum of $10,000 to rebuild. So if we lose a pump, I mean, we have no way of predicting that. We still have to replace the pump. We have to get the pump repaired. So that's why we save that, so that I don't have to come here to the select board and say like, hey, I need some money to rebuild the pump with, and have them dip into their reserves, when actually through good management of our accounts, we can squeak by on that.
We
And that's what we're trying
have
to
to
do.
be able to answer questions from the townspeople.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, no, we understand that, no, absolutely.
On 660, you said see detail attached. I did not receive any details.
It might be in your packet that you just got.
The packet you just gave me?
Yeah, that packet was when you were on vacation, so it did, I think it came in after your book was put together. Has a binder clip on it.
Yeah, you copy of those,
Yeah. If you don't, I can take it out of my book.
I think that was some information that was available after we put the books together.
I thought it was all the stuff that's itemized underneath it, but
It might be the justification she's missing.
Yeah, I didn't see it either, but.
Well, there's nothing in this
But
packet.
I can tell you that if you look at the math underneath there,
Yeah.
everything that has been requested, they've priced out underneath. So I think that's the detail, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think that, it may be in a narrative in another portion in that packet, but it looks to me like it's all detailed underneath there. I'm pretty sure I tallied that up, and, because we had a question, because at one point it looked like the command car maintenance was, you know, $18,900 and some odd dollars, when it was actually the total of all the different,
Oh, yeah, that was.
different lines.
That might have been the question. I think I printed this off in a different format rather than on this.
Oh,
Hang on.
So we're talking about account numbers 10-660, fire department vehicle maintenance.
Yeah.
And there's a list here of each of the different vehicles.
Vehicles
And
with the
what-
associated costs.
Right, okay. So help us understand how we've gone from a department request of $20,000 to a BOS request of $15,000. What did they talk with you about on that?
I honestly don't know what
We
they took out of it.
we presented our budget, they made their decisions after
Okay,
that.
all right, fair enough.
So,
Then help us understand your request then.
if you go
Sure.
down through there,
If you look at each thing, so obviously there's a minimal amount of maintenance that's required on every vehicle every year, which is itemized out in there. There is also unexpected maintenance. I can tell you that this year, when I sent the engines out to have their inspections, we spent an additional $4,500 on unforeseen repairs on those engines. They age, things wear out, things go like that. Part of our request here is currently our rehab vehicle, our 1985 Ford, the original rescue vehicle, does not have an inspection sticker on it, will not pass inspection because the cab corners are rotted out. So a big portion of this particular request this year is what I'm estimating to be, and this again is my estimation on knowledge, not having anybody actually look at it, of removing the box, having the cab corners done, kind of doing a little bit of rehab on that truck, putting fuel injection on it, bringing it kind of up. Because it's our belief that by spending the $10,000 on that 85 truck now, we can probably get another 10 to 20 years out of that vehicle based on current mileage and what it gets used for and stuff like that. I mean, it's a required piece of apparatus for the rehab portion of it. Terry, you're very familiar with this. And so rather than trying to go look to buy a new vehicle.
there's only 20,000 miles on it.
Yeah, that's it. So to put a little TLC into that truck and get another 20 years out of it only makes sense as opposed to going to look, it cost us well over $100,000 to replace that truck once you get all said and done. And God knows we spent enough lately, so.
Other than having to correct the rust issues, does that vehicle have all of the, not necessarily required equipment, but does it have all of the desired equipment for a rehab vehicle at this point?
It is very well equipped for rehab, yes.
I'll tell you that for you, Terry. We actually have that set up for rehab. Everything that you want. We even have the defibrillator on there for. Not a AED. We have a full functional one. The other thing we have on that is blood gas monitors. We have cool down chairs. We have everything that you need. Plus, we're set up for mass casualty. Frisbee Hospital gave us 10 backboards and stuff to put on that truck. We put on that truck with packs, with collars. So they grab a backboard, they grab a bag, and they've got collars to stabilize their patients. So that truck's being utilized by not only us, but the surrounding area for rehab and for if they, knock on wood, if they ever need it for mass casualty. So Frisbee did donate that stuff to us. Actually, they still own it. We just house it for them.
Okay. Clens, can you help us with
Yep.
the action that the BOS took?
So again, there are basically three reasons why the select board arrived at the 15,000 number. One is that we have a brand new ambulance, which was put into service roughly a month ago. And considerable expenses on the maintenance area went into the ambulance prior to, the old ambulance. So a new ambulance, you wouldn't expect to have to repeat those kinds of services. Brand new command car, similar argument on that. And then there was a large expense, in our opinion, in both 16 and 17, more so maybe, well, both in 16 and 17, really in 17 here, to bring many of the other vehicles to a more improved state of vehicle maintenance than perhaps it was before, with the system we had before. So those three basic arguments. One is saying we shouldn't see that high of a vehicle maintenance thing in 2018. Therefore, we went from 20 to 15.
And that's why we justified everything on there.
So we also should probably note that we did not spend any money to maintain the old ambulance this year because it was a loaner for the entire year. So all those bills were submitted to the ambulance company. And then we didn't really put any money into the command car anticipating replacing it. So that, if you look, we're probably got about $2,200 left in our maintenance budget right now with a month and a half left. And that didn't include any money that went into the old command car for the most part. There was some minor stuff, or the ambulance, because we didn't pay for any of those repairs. So we utilized.
That's why I said 16 and 17.
Right, no, I understand. I understand.
But because we do have two new vehicles, there's warranty coverage for any.
So I don't, the only anticipation for both, there's only one possible expenditure we're looking at with the new command car for this coming year, and that would be possibly having to put snow tires on it. They are not a very aggressive tire that came on the vehicle. We don't know yet. We budgeted, I think, $600 just in case. So if we find that the vehicle's not performing well in the snow, we can put snow tires on it. But other than that, both the ambulance and the command car, the only expenses we're anticipating are your normal state inspection and normal maintenance.
Oil changes.
Yeah, oil changes and that kind of stuff. It does, you know, we do preventative maintenance on each of the larger apparatus. I do it every year with the state inspection, just to make sure that it's done. That's about $600 per vehicle, give or take, on that. We are looking to remove one of the seats in engine 2 this year and install a medical cabinet in there. We've got medical supplies on the outside of it currently that really should be in a more climate controlled environment. That truck gets very cold at a fire. We've added, you know, we've got a Zoll on there now, a cardiac monitor on there as well that should be inside and contained. So that, anticipating that's going to be a little bit extra money for that. Again, the biggest expenditure for this year will be utility, and I have estimated that. I don't know how much it's going to be yet. It's going to be at least $10,000 by the time we're all said and done.
And if something should happen, Scott, would the capital reserve fund that's been set up for catastrophic situations that would be, or could be utilized?
There will be a small
Equipment here for maintenance?
The answer is yes.
That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
Because we've anticipated this, I don't think you can use
The capital reserve fund was set up, it was established
10,000 in
for,
it.
large expenses.
Unexpected though, right?
But if
The
you
word
had a pump
unexpected is
failure,
not
I
in the
mean-
language
Oh,
established.
pump failure, yeah.
It's under the authorization of the
You use
select board.
that, yeah, you use that as an example, so I'm thinking, okay,
Well-
if you had that kind of failure, that we would have some resource that could be used.
And
I did use that as a reference on why we don't spend our budget till the end of the year. If that in fact is available to us, well, we can spend all of our money in the beginning of the year.
Again, it's under the authorization of the select board.
I know, but I don't, I don't rely on that to run my department, I don't rely on that kind of a.
in reality, with that capital reserve fund, the fact that the rehab vehicle wouldn't pass inspection would be a legitimate reason to ask the Board of Selectmen to utilize that fund to get it to pass inspection. It has always been utilized for quote unexpected, but I believe the language of the warrant article did not include the term unexpected. I would have to check the warrant article, I don't think that word was in there.
I think you're correct, but we should have checked the actual language, but I think you're correct.
And one thing to keep in mind, not to belabor this much longer,
Right.
is that you're right. I mean, that fund is there and can be utilized, and the Board of Selectmen can access it. Right now, it has no money in it, because we have had to access it. It hasn't been, it's been hit over the last 3 or 4 years with some major expenses, primarily from highway, on different various pieces of equipment in that situation there. And if they know about the repair, and the repair really should be managed as much as they can through their operating budget, if they know about it. If they really, I mean, I look at that fund as, that capital reserve fund is for those things that all of a sudden pop up during the year, whether it be the pump or usually the packing, or you have something, a valve.
The reason why I'm thinking of that fund is that I have concerns that it could be, well, the budget doesn't pass till March. I believe you said the rehab does not pass inspection.
Currently does not, that's
So
correct.
they are without a rehab vehicle for possibly up to 6 months.
Inspection is September, isn't it?
Correct.
So it's still inspected.
Well, no,
No.
it failed in
It
September.
failed.
Oh, this passed.
This passed,
Okay.
so it's currently not inspected.
Okay.
So it's not,
The only
it's not an
vehicle,
inspection sticker, so my understanding it cannot be on the
It's
road.
out of service.
So there is not a rehab vehicle available. It will
But
require
I
mutual aid.
still believe that there's some avenues for remedy
Yeah.
to get that. I
Yeah,
do not
of
believe that the town would be in a position where, if that is a necessary piece of equipment, that we couldn't get that back on the road and in
Exactly.
service.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
I want to just suggest something. In 10 years I've been here, I've never relied on anything other than my operational budget to run the fire department, regardless of what happened to our equipment.
But what,
We've always anticipated and moved money around from different things, and we make sacrifices to do that. I don't, I'm not the kind of guy that just says, all right, we'll just go back to the taxpayer, and if I need 10 grand to do a truck, we'll just go take it out of that fund. If I can do it inside the budget, I'm gonna do it inside the budget. Even if I have to make concessions someplace else.
I weighs on the back of my mind with some of those decisions sometimes is we're not doing things, and each year things are being requested, and I understand the sacrifices, but at some point, when are we gonna pay the piper? Because we keep making these sacrifices and not doing what we're asking.
The current select board has wrestled, and you know this because you attended the last meeting, but there was even more than that too, prior discussions. The current select board has wrestled very much with that, also recognizing that you can't do everything all in the first year.
Correct, I
It's not fair to the
understand.
taxpayer to do that.
No, you're
So we're trying to provide a reasonable approach to address that, and certainly deal with those emergency things that come up still, and make sure that we have that covered in one way or the other, which is your point as well.
Yeah, and it's just a concern, I'm not
Well, no,
making an
you're right,
issue.
and it's been a
It's
concern of ours, because to be quite honest, I mean, as all of us sitting here know, some of the previous boards have cut things so greatly that things have gone undone. And it makes it a challenge, and you're right, at some point, it has to get done, and it, you know, and to what end? So that's why the things that we're proposing, we're trying to, each year we do a little bit more. You know, there were some things this year that were planned to be replaced on trucks and stuff like that that did not get done. There wasn't enough money, just is what it is. So we prioritize, we do it, you know, I can tell you that I'm very confident that our equipment and our entire fleet over there is probably in the best shape it's been, I can't tell you in how long. I take a lot of pride in that, we work really hard at that. But there's obviously still more to be done, and it, you know.
I would just get, as of the end of October, and I realize that November's a very expensive month usually, there was about 44,000 left. I would just encourage you to perhaps get more solid estimates on fixing the rust issues on the rescue, in case you have enough money to sneak it out of this year's budget.
No, absolutely.
I'm concerned about you having a major event without having a rehab vehicle around.
Well, I mean, the reality of it is that if we have a major event, we're gonna roll the truck. I mean, it's,
Okay.
I'm in,
All right, I think we should move on, because we've got other budgets we need to,
sorry, but
sorry.
Would you like to reflect for a period of minutes, Scott, or you just kind of moving right along?
Not that I haven't said similar things in my career, but.
I guess the next line item that I see that there's a difference on is line item number 20-190, fire department compensation. The department requested $75,000. The board of selectmen has approved $70,000. You have here a list of hours and the different dollar amounts to compensate for those hours. Are these hours projected hours, or are they based on actual tracking hours that you have been tracking?
All those hours are correct, yes. Firehouse is very good about that, because we use that to develop a payroll account. So every time somebody goes out, every time somebody does something, either they're on the clock because of a dispatch, or they fill out a slip, and on that slip they put down what the detail they were working on at the time. So in that, those kind of chores all fall underneath that kind of compensation. Say if I have to have work done in the apparatus bay. That's not administrative work, obviously, so that gets put onto that with the slip, you can fill out to let us know how long it took them to do the work. And that has to be approved. That has to be approved by me. They can put it on there, and there's a box on that. It's a volunteer time, or it's approved time for pay.
it to some degree is estimated though because of trends. Where obviously we can't know exactly how many calls we're gonna get every year. So I believe you use an average over.
On the call.
For the call ones, yes.
That's done by averages. But if you look at the, I gave you a slip for trending. You compare the last couple of years on the graph. Can I get, Scott, can I get those?
No.
My computer's down, again, so I'm limited on what I can get out of that now.
No. No, I don't have anything else.
And we're trending right on, I think, but this was before this last storm, I think we were like 40 calls under where we were last year at the end of the year, so we've got another month and a half to go. And if we have another storm like we had, that all changes really rapidly. This is the time of year when that's gonna change. I mean, we get 27 calls in 2 days, like we did this past weekend. The nice thing about that is that those are all combined into just straight time. So the calls are more expensive to us when they come hours apart from each other, because the guys have to come back in.
Based on,
But I think we're gonna be right up where we were last year, if not a little bit above.
based on yearly expenditures, you're gonna end the year at almost 72,000 in compensation if you keep up the same pace. So you're asking for an increase of $3,000 overall.
Yeah, because, let me tell you, you may understand this, but my staff hasn't changed in the past year, because if I add personnel, my payroll goes up and my training costs go up. So, having not gotten increases last year, we made a determination that we're gonna stick with the crew we have. There's a risk in that, because we lose people through attrition, so the department gets smaller. And the people that are here end up working more hours, so we burn them out. So then we get them, they're not well, they say, don't respond as quick as they would if they were, if they didn't get beat up. So I need to pull in some more people. That costs money. I have to add payroll. All that time they're here, it takes them a year to get them certified. All that time they're here, going to school and get certified, it's cost on the payroll. In order to keep that cost off the payroll, to manage to cover the calls, I didn't have any of that in this year at all. So none of those expenses show up on this past year's budget, because I knew we weren't gonna have the surplus funds to do that.
How many people do you have now?
18.
And how many did you have last year?
We started with 18 last year.
So you got the same.
We have the same number. I've only got out of that 18, I probably got 8 that show up on a regular basis unless I have a fire, and then I have more that show up on fires. But the problem with I say we have 18 people. Remember, they still only volunteer to come. When they get here, they're compensated. But to get them out of bed at night, or to get them pull away from a family event or something, it's tough to do sometimes. And if I don't have a bigger group to pull from, I got caught this year a couple of times, I tell you. I had to call the Farmington trucker to cover us on an ambulance call. And our guys all step out of the Farmington truck, all 3 of them. And I'm going like, guys, come on, I asked you, be careful about how you schedule it. But they're getting paid hourly down there. They go down there to make money, and I can't compete with that.
Do you pay your personnel when they're attending firefighter 1, firefighter 2?
No.
You pay the tuition only?
I pay tuition only. But they still come to all the
Right.
Monday night trainings. So there's overhead there for us. And I certainly want them to, because I want them to learn on our equipment.
But when they're here training, that's all coming out of that compensation?
All coming out of that
Right,
compensation.
right. Yeah, that's not out of the training line item?
No, the training line item covers the schooling costs
Yeah.
and outside instructors. If we pull in an outside instructor for a particular, like we haven't sent anybody out for training this year much, so the line's still pretty healthy there. But that's because we knew we were going to have, that was kind of our reserve for payroll. We may end up still dipping into that for payroll.
So in your budget packets, there is pages in behind which have these that's what Pete was talking about, was some of the firehouse data that was in there, which gave some past couple of years of calls. Plus there's a justification narrative that goes along with it. I just want to make sure everybody had seen that. Plus there's some other capital supporting data in there. I just wanted to make sure that if somebody's missing it, just let me know, because
I have a couple
some of these came together. So
One each.
The other thing is, when I sat with the chief, which I've done with several of the larger departments, one-on-one, to go over some of these things so I can get my head around it and to kind of help prepare them for what would be expected things to, understand. Firehouse had given the chief these hours as far as a breakdown, and he made some, tweaking here and there as to what he's seen with the trend. And then I, and with his blessing, to a certain extent, I guess, we then applied a average hourly rate based upon their wage scales, which is also in your book, and used the $13.13 as an average in order to look at the compensation. And that's why you see that $82,000 price tag there. So the other equation that we also did as far as trying to look at trends and hours that are involved is that, and once again, this is just a kind of a shot in the dark here to a certain extent, because it's just like Pete said, normally he gets a steady 8 people if they're around and available that come to a lot of these calls, and then if there's a fire, he gets more people. But if you take their average calls in that situation, just an example, if you take the calls of total in 2016 was 283 calls, I believe. That was your total for the year, Pete?
No, I think low for 16.
Or maybe it was year to date.
Year to date, that was
Year to date, okay, so we matched them from last year to this year.
360 something.
At the time that Pete gave me this information, which was October 23rd, they were at 238 calls, and last year they were at 283 calls. So if you take the 283 and you use a multiplier of 20 hours of compensation that is paid out to firefighters or responding staff, that could be 5 people for 2 hours, that could be 3 people for 4 hours, those types of things there, depending on whether it's a transport to Portsmouth, it could be a transport to Huggins, Concord, wherever that may be, but that is a compensation. So I use the 20 hours to see if in fact the number that is projected here, based upon Firehouse and what Pete and his staff did, is close. Well, as of October, that would have been, on the 283 calls, it would have been 5,660 hours, and on 238 calls, it would have been 4,760 hours, as far as doing that. We checked that to what his payroll was. He was at, on October 23rd, he was at 5,726 hours, was a grand total of hours. And I believe, and I don't know, I believe that would also include the chief's hours for responding to calls, I believe, just on the
Maybe, yeah,
response.
maybe add
Was not, I did not see, I don't believe the admin,
It's not on there. You got this.
it may not be on here, but it may, some of them.
There's a line that says admin duties.
Yeah.
It's right below the
Yeah,
day
and it's-
position.
But on the second page, which was the 2016's hours, it was 7,600 hours. So the admin hours probably are in there, because that would equate to the admin hours on top of what I just did with the 20 hour estimation towards it. So just trying to get some sense of justification whether or not the hours are inflated or not. And then, but when, I don't think the 20 hours is an unrealistic number. Pete and I sat for quite a while trying to, look at different scenarios, just to see what that is. The other concern that he has, relative to the, times, holiday weekends during the summertime, where he spoke of the incident where his staff is working for another agency. These are call people, they're not paid, they're paid if available and respond, but they're not paid to be on call and sit and stay in town and be available. They either have jobs, and some of those jobs are in fact working for other
Agencies.
agencies or companies. So, I mean, in this budget, I believe Pete has, Chief has some hours built in so that he can provide, make sure we have some assurances that we have at least a couple attendants on and available. They may not physically be in the station, but they would be similar to, you know,
Standby.
what the police department might have done at one point in time where they say you get, you know, 2 hours of call to be available and stay in town and be within a, you know, 15-minute response or whatever.
Well, we did 3, maybe 4 years ago. We had, on the busy weekend, like, I know I'm gonna get calls on 4th of July, I know I'm gonna get calls on the busy weekend. I can almost pick them out, I go through Firehouse now, and I can pull out the busy weekend. And I can say, what I do is I made arrangements with, like I said, 4 or 5 years ago, I said, I'll pay you for 2 hours, but you gotta be available for the run. The day that you don't, you sign up for this and you're not available, you're not allowed to sign up for it again. So what they would do is the guy, and I don't have to, that way, we know we have a staff of at least 2 on, that's all I'd cover, the 2 for the medical. And they would be available for a 6-hour period. So somebody would take the day shift, somebody would take the night shift over the weekend. That helps cut down on the amount of the time that everybody has to come running down here because nobody knows who's on. Now, we know we got shift coverage, it comes up on our who's responding now, we can check on our phone and we'll say, oh, we got somebody on coverage tonight, we're all set. They don't have to get up and come down, and that in itself will save us a little bit because we might not need them. And then we've got the bariatrics patients, which we're gonna need help for anyway, hopefully not so much as we used to, but we're working our way through that, so.
Chief, these numbers came out of Firehouse, correct?
That's what he said, yeah.
Yes.
Page 3? Because it shows that the salary costs in 2016 for emergency calls alone was almost $85,000. And I'm looking at a request, not that I want to give more money, give money
No,
away, but I'm looking at a request.
No,
You're absolutely right, Terry.
it went over last year.
Just to put that in perspective, the year before was 61,000.
Yeah,
It was 67,
61,
68,000.
61.8.
so,
The emergency calls was
Look at the
67,920.
actual, or what we had.
Yeah.
It's
So somehow,
It
it's taking it
varies.
from somewhere else.
and that's what I do.
61,800.
Last year we did, and this year we know already for a fact that we're gonna go over on payroll again.
I back up a couple of years and I average. So you're gonna see a high year, and then it's gonna drop down, you're gonna say, oh, you got enough money. But we did, and I remember I told you last year it looked like it was gonna be unusually high, seemed to be trending that way. This year, I don't know if we're gonna hold the same or not, but we may be the same or less, but we're gonna be pretty close.
But when you look at a 5-year average, it's like looking at the amount of heating oil that's used. You look at the 5-year average, and you have a figure you have to use for budgeting.
That's right, and that's what we did. That's the figure you got. The 2 years before that was low. That's the problem. We had 2 really low years. And that hit, when you do the averaging, that hits the averaging. So,
All right, Sven's, could you at this point tell us why the selectmen?
Yeah, we really have covered through that, particularly last part of the discussion, we looked at the last 2 to 4
Okay.
years. We estimated that, okay, there aren't gonna be highs, there are gonna be lows. We felt $70,000. It's higher than what we budgeted last year. But we felt that was going to be approximately what could cover it.
And where
It's
does it
about
come
5, so almost 5,000 more than last year.
And where does it come from if it doesn't cover it?
We pull it out of our other budget lines. That's where we pull it out of maintenance, we pull it out of
Just like any other.
training, we pull it out of,
Right, suppose, I'm just asking, suppose you can't, suppose those lines got used and now you have.
so you weren't here
No.
earlier, so I'll explain what we do. We put off all of our budgeted purchases to the end of the year,
Okay,
which is why when we do this process, we look like we're out of joint for that reason. So in case something goes wrong or something, so for instance, we have yet to purchase the new thermal imager that we budgeted for this year. There's a bunch of other things. We leave that money in that account. So now we get to this point, we already know for a fact that our payroll line is once again this year gonna be over. So we're already looking at what lines we can pull money from to cover that so we don't go over.
yeah, and also, Mr. Swens, I might add that we didn't put any new staff on this year, so we have no training expenses.
So
So,
if you have training expense, because you need every Monday for training.
but not for new staff.
Yeah.
So new training costs me a lot more than maintaining.
I'm
Maintains
sorry
a
I
lot
wasn't
cheaper.
here to.
No, that's fine.
Another meeting.
We understand.
Yep. So that, none of that cost is in there. I don't wanna go another year without bringing some, it's not fair to the town, as people wanna join. I've had 3 or 4 applications this year that I had to turn away.
Well, I don't know whether we've got time for that other discussion, because you've thrown that out there. It just leads me to think, you know, you've said that you've got 18 people on the roster, only 8 are active, so why wouldn't you be able to take those other people on?
Because they cost more money.
8 are active,
When I
more
call-
active on calls. We have more than that co- so there are 8 consistently that cover the majority of the calls. There are several other members that do help us out in, I can tell you there was a Sunday not that long ago where I had 4 members show up that I hadn't seen for a while, but they bailed my butt out because it was just me on a motor vehicle accident. So they still add value. They, a lot of times will come to training, they'll go to meetings.
I say we have 8 people that show up average on a call, but we have 14 EMTs that need continuing ed.
Okay, so
That's an
the
expense to us.
18 are still considered active, but it's an
They're still in the
average
training plan.
response
They have
of
to be.
8?
If they have to maintain a certain
Okay.
training level.
We
If
have-
they don't, we
yeah.
move them out.
That's different than what I thought I heard.
So
Okay.
there was a time a couple of years ago where there were members of the department that were not active. We've kind of cleaned we've cleaned the roster up and brought it down to people that are gonna participate. Because obviously it doesn't make any sense to have someone on there that's not gonna help you out.
And that's what I was trying
Right,
to.
no, I get that, right, so we've cleaned up that aspect of it.
And they have to maintain their training records, so we have to
Right.
come to that.
I think we've beaten that dog to death, I think.
Okay.
So, all right. Any other questions about any of the other line items?
Medical supplies was an increase. Want to talk about that quick?
Sure.
Fire inspections, you spent 0 as of November 9th and 16.
You're welcome.
You've only spent $74 this year.
You're welcome. I do that on my own time.
Because you're the fire inspector, so you're doing that as part of your,
Yeah.
your scheduled
The only
time.
time you see something on that is if somebody else goes with me to expedite the inspection. Like we go out to the camps, I could be there for 2 days inspecting one of those. I take a couple of guys with me and they go out and then we go through it quick. That's when you see some money tacked onto that.
Because I'm not seeing the money being spent.
There was a little bit there.
No, you spent $74 this year.
Budget was roughly 900, so it's not a huge.
Yeah.
No, it's not, it doesn't, like I say,
Based
I try
on what
not
we've been
to.
experiencing, it's a good thing it's there.
Yeah, I try to do that, that's the one thing I can do and we do, and on the wood stove inspections, by the way, when people call me and want wood stove, a lot of insurance companies require wood stove inspections, I go do them. Just to say, because I want, first of all, it's a free service we offer to the townspeople to do the wood stove and pellet stove and water inspections. And I don't want it to be costing me because it's free, I like people to call us, I'd rather go. So I do those myself, so it's not a burden on the town.
All right. Medical supplies, you said you wanted to speak to that.
I was just gonna say, yeah, there's an increase in that, that's for EpiPens. I want a shout out here from, the Farmington drugstore always covered those for us at their expense. They just gave them to us. They just sold out.
Is that right, Dave?
Yes.
They just sold out to CVS, I believe,
Yeah.
and they said no more.
Could
We
you,
went, so the last time we went to buy EpiPens, they were $1,500.
how much?
Yes.
Because you said $400 on mine, that's not right.
Well, wait a minute. Wait, that's what they told us there, so we did some shopping around. And we got a better deal. And, that drugstore chain is offered to keep coupons for us and keep them and get us.
It was Walgreens down in Rochester.
Yeah.
They not only gave us a generic, gave us obviously a much better deal, but then went and found coupons for us.
Yeah,
They did.
So, yeah, they saved us quite a bit of money.
So,
We are more community
and
conscious.
you said $400, but you want $2,500 before. Your numbers just don't jive.
well, that's because we thought we were gonna have to pay the full. What I'm telling you is we found a cheap way to get them.
What is this?
So,
Yeah.
if that holds out for us, we'll be golden.
They have to be replaced every year.
Right.
Yes, you know, they
And you
expire.
need a
You
double,
don't know
you
if
need
you
trial.
don't know if you're gonna be able to do them for $100, because you may not have that opportunity again either.
They were 400. I can't see them jumping back up to 15, but if they can't get the coupons and stuff for us, they might go to 8 or something, I don't know.
And then replacement if they have to use them.
Yeah, if we use them, the hospital will replace those, that's a problem.
Also, see Laura, she's got some medication cards for reduced rates for prescription items.
Oh, nice.
I don't think we qualify, do we?
A lot of people qualify. and Walgreens is part of it.
Nice.
Okay.
Any other lines you guys have questions on?
That's what I was just
We're
gonna
taking up the
ask,
whole
if
night
there's
here.
any other questions.
Do you have any protective gear on order?
Yes, there is another set of gear that just got ordered, which is $2,500, and then I have to replace some gloves
Gloves, we'll go to the new hoods.
and hoods. I need new hoods too.
We have a hood now that it holds out the carcinogens.
Okay.
We're gonna change everybody's hoods out.
Mark, did you have any questions?
I think, but they were all left by others, so thank you.
Okay,
Just, as was noted, but on November 2nd, the select board approved $224,863 for this budget.
and the department's total request was $238,421. So at this point, if there isn't any additional new discussion or anything or comments, is the budget committee ready to take action, or do we need additional information for this request?
I'm ready to make a couple of suggestions.
We'll go with it.
In regard to account line 10115, fire department, part-time secretarial, I would suggest that the budget committee fund that at $6,000.
And your reason?
I think I haven't heard justification for $8,000, but based on what I've heard and based on extrapolating what they spent to date, $6,000 gives them about $500 more than I think they're gonna be spending. I would be looking for far more detail next year before it would be increased. And as far as line 2190, fire department compensation, I'm not inclined to reduce it to 70,000, but I could justify to myself reducing it to 73,000.
Okay,
So I'm just looking at the items where the board of selectmen had reduced them.
Vehicle maintenance?
Compensation.
No,
No,
compensation.
I got that, 73, I just plugged it in, just to give you guys numbers.
Yeah.
Compensation, I don't know, do you want to go with the board of selectmen's recommendation?
Well, that's what I want to get now. I want to find out consensus here. We'll go back to line 115, the secretarial. Terry has proposed that the budget committee recommends 6,000 as its suggested amount. How does the budget committee feel about that?
I would just as soon leave it at 5.
Mark?
I don't think that,
I prefer to leave it at 5 also.
And I'm of the same mindset. I prefer to leave it at 5 as well.
I go along with the board of selectmen's number.
Okay, the other line item is 20-190, fire department compensation. We've had a suggested recommendation to increase that line item to 73,000 instead of what the board of selectmen approved at 70,000, which would be still a reduction of the 75,000 that the department asked. How does the budget committee feel about the recommendation of increasing the request to 73,000 over the board of selectmen's request? Dave?
no, I prefer to leave it with the selectmen's number.
Mark?
That makes good sense.
I would leave it at 7 also.
I do too. Ellen?
I would have gone with the 73, but
I go with board of selectmen.
it seems like it's
And there's also
We're gonna order that this year.
660.
Yep.
What was
Vehicle
660?
maintenance.
I didn't
What
get
number
that
was
we
that?
had any increase on that, did we?
Page 2, account 10660, fire department vehicle maintenance. Department requested 20,000, the board of selectmen is giving 15,000.
Right. I was just gonna go with the bottom line after that, because it wasn't a line that I had heard us make any different recommendation on it, right? As a budget committee. So all the numbers at this point would match the board of selectmen's request, which would, the bottom line would be Scott,
224,
Wait
863.
a minute, they don't all match. Some Board of Selectmen requested 4,000 for the secretary.
No, I don't have
and
enough.
I don't have an up-to-date number.
That's the,
Sorry.
so the bottom line would be 224,863 that the budget committee would be considering.
So we're going with the 70 instead of the 73 for compensation.
No, we said 70 by
what I'm
consensus,
asking.
yeah, by
Majority said
consensus,
70.
yes.
Would you like a motion?
If we're ready, yes.
I move that we accept that we approve
Very good.
the fire department budget. You want a number for that?
Yes, I do, a total. It's
No, I
account
mean, the
number,
number for the budget?
yeah, account number 4220, so that the
Yeah,
recorder.
4220
Yeah.
at $224,863.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. I think we've had enough discussion, but I will ask if there is any other
I would
comment.
like to say something because I wasn't
Okay.
here.
Okay.
I would like to say that people are the most important part of the fire department. The people aren't there to put out the fires, because we'll not have a fire department. If the fire department this year, and I have to say I probably didn't watch it as closely last year, feel they need 75 items, $5,000 is a lot of money, and a lot of people and a lot of time. And so I would probably vote no because I think it's too low. I'm hearing them say it's too low and they're going to go over, and I just don't think we should do that.
Okay. Any other comments or discussion?
I feel that a couple of lines are underfunded, and I will be voting no, because I believe the budget's underfunded.
Okay, very good. Right. At this point, I'm going to call for the vote. Any abstentions? All those in favor? Aye.
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 And those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so I have
No.
four yeses, and 2 noes. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your time.
Who's coming?
Yeah, you're not done yet. We've got 2
management.
more. We've got 4290 and
Emergency
4291.
management.
He's not being
Well said.
He's not here.
Well, actually, let's go through Dave's, so I'm here all day.
That would be,
Let's do it. We'll do it first.
Presented
Do
them.
first, can you?
Pretty straightforward.
Don't have to. I don't think, it isn't very much in there.
Who's presenting? 4290? Are we talking 4291?
I was, well.
4290 is emergency management. And Pete and I sat there and put this together, it's the same as,
Right,
it's
so
a little bit more
let's-
than last year, based upon $500 to, an increase actually towards, hopefully doing something with the emergency management plan. I'm not sure if that's gonna be enough money to take care of it, but it'll be try to get started on it. Needs to be rewritten, it's been 5 years.
It's been 5 years, Terry, can you believe it?
2000 and.
Yeah, we did that when, actually, when you.
Yeah, that would be like the first time. What about grant money to supplement that?
There is some grant money that is available out there. We had one proposal come forward so far. It was for $4,000 to do the plan. This is just so you understand, the Homeland Security and Emergency Management has done a complete rewrite and format of their entire system, so it's not the same plan any longer. It's completely different. Has to be done, I'll be honest with you. To think your staff time can actually do that plan is unrealistic. You'll have to seek grants and try to do that plan through a
Stratford
consultant.
Regional help us too on this, or not?
They have in the
Stratford
past.
Regional has helped out with hazardous mitigation plans, but the grants are actually with emergency management through private consultants. The regional planning are not doing these, only hazardous mitigation plans.
So we just finished hazard mitigation last year, so that's done.
Stratford helped us with that.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, Stratford Regional has helped with the hazmat,
Yep, they did a very good job.
but it's been direct grant, you like direct grants for the EMD.
Any other questions or anything for,
Yeah, I mean, the board, as you see, the select board had no changes on this one from what was requested, so.
thank you.
I guess, why did we see an expense of $200 for forestry equipment under this?
That was misapplied, that's misapplied, in my opinion.
So that's why there's nothing under.
I don't think that had anything.
It's a year-to-date thing.
Oh, you know what that was? That's a fund, Terry, that they have for a major incident, it's not in the regular forestry.
Now, this is 4630, that really belongs in account number
Okay, so
4291.
yeah.
It's completely, it's in the wrong account
It's
completely.
a natural, it's a natural
just
cost,
take
it looks
that
like
out.
this.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, that should be zero, because we.
But it was put there last year?
No, it's
This year.
year to date. It's something that we picked up on one of our quarterly reviews.
Charged to that account.
Right.
So the total request for, from the department is $1,052, and the Board of Selectmen have approved $1,052. If there's no other questions or further discussion, are we ready to take action on this?
I will make a motion to approve account number 4290, emergency management, in the amount of $1,052.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Terry to approve account number 4290, emergency management, in the amount of $1,052. It has been seconded by Dave Sabori. There is no other discussion. Mark, do you have any questions or comment?
No, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in, well, any abstentions, is the way I first do it. Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
So it passed 1, 2,
Six.
3, 4, 6, 0 to 0.
This is not higher math.
Well, with him not physically sitting there, it throws me off.
6, right?
6-0, yes. Okay, and then the 4191, is that something we can do real quick, or do we have to wait?
4291.
4291, I have several questions that I'd like the board to answer.
Well, maybe Pete can answer them, maybe
This is the
can't.
forestry budget.
I can try.
First one was on fire suppression training payroll.
10-740.
At, line 10180, to date we've spent,
sorry.
what has been spent is $2,099. And the request is still for $5480.
Yeah. Now, we're lucky this year, but we also just did the storm outages, so some of that.
Did what?
The storm outages, the
So this is
tree.
the training line,
On the training line?
yeah.
Oh, I don't know what he's got.
This is training payroll.
Okay.
Training payroll, 580 line?
Yes,
10,580.
180.
I thought she said 180, and that's.
4291-10-180.
Yeah.
Forest fire suppression training payroll.
Yep.
It has both suppression and it has training, but they've only been spent is
Well, they didn't have any forest
$2,099.
fires.
Thank you.
That was through, October, that was through September too.
Yeah.
so.
That's all those combined, training and fire suppression.
Again, to be fair, there's a slash after suppression,
Yeah.
so
Right.
it's supposed to be labor hours for suppression work as well as training for that.
And I think this past payroll, more has come out,
Yeah.
so that number is not.
'Cause
Year
this
to
was
date
the,
is, yeah.
the number I had was like as of October 31st.
Yes,
And
so
just
what came out
last
this
payroll?
last payroll,
Was a large forestry payroll?
forestry.
Yeah, because on the storm, because of trees and wires down,
He
I
would've
believe
been out,
that that was charged off, right, chief, to, some of it to forestry, because they ran the forestry truck.
In the year and to date on
And they
this
had money.
sheet that I had, I'm sorry, Scott,
Sorry.
1031, there were a number of line items that were already over in the budget too as well,
Yeah,
so.
that's-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Scott.
No, no, I'm just saying that,
I don't know if there's gonna be a surplus in that budget. I don't think there will, because like,
Well, I'm not
Kathy.
questioning a surplus, I'm
Say-
questioning if it's sufficient request.
well, I believe it is, I think, yeah.
$5,480.
Do you know if there's any protective clothing on order?
Dave usually, I think, well, because we haven't brought in any new staff, probably not. His gears doesn't get beat up like mine does.
but it's the same situation.
If you
You
need it,
know,
you
in
need it.
fact, they have forest fires and then they take it on payroll and, you know, it's the same type of situation unfortunately. As it is with most of the departments, they end up having to do the same type of triage with their budget, because there's not any, ability to, you know, provide a,
I was trying to jive the numbers from this document, which came from Firehouse, I believe,
yeah.
with the numbers on this document. And, okay, this one says, for permit issuance, which is line 185, this document says 1,035, but the budget says 963, and this was a document from October 23rd, which predated the storms.
Yeah.
There was some inconsistencies in the numbers, and I'm not sure if some of it's going into your budget, it should be in the warden's budget, or if it's vice versa.
On the permit writing,
That's just one of them, the permit writing is one of them.
because actually, if we have staff there doing something else, we all pitch in write permits, so not, every Saturday doesn't build off the permits. So we might have a Saturday where 3 or 4 people are working, they write permits too, we don't bill that off.
So it's not all billed.
I'm only speaking from what I've seen happen, because
Yeah.
we don't have just one person write permits, and that Saturday, 3 people might write permits. I don't think it's billed off that way. Because Saturday's our big permit day. Whoever doesn't have their hand on the wrench at the time runs out and fills out the permit. So, I think what Michael's doing is he doesn't want to see any double billing going on. So he tries to pull it so that if they're doing, the majority of the time they've done maintenance work, then they ran out and wrote a permit, it doesn't get charged off the permits. It's permit time. So I think that may be where you see a discrepancy, I'm not sure, Terry.
In the payroll lines, 4291, 10, 180. It looks like $2,099.30. So there's a $90 discrepancy.
Thank you.
That's not
wasn't
what
worried
I'm
about.
digging about, yeah, yeah.
That was there, but was on the document that came from the fire department that said that there was.
All right.
What line item are we looking at? I can look
It
them up.
says that there's like $2,600, that's where the discrepancy is, not between your documents, but
It
between
is 180.
what document we were given versus what you have as official records.
Does that move time? Does that show the time that's got moved from?
It might under a different query. I don't think it does on that, does it, Jenny? Yeah, it might, if we
Because
query.
there's multiple lines that hit the firehouse,
I know.
the forestry.
Yeah, I'll have to query that and see.
Okay.
All right,
Again,
so,
sorry to interrupt. I was just gonna say, the select board
That's where I
approved
was
what was
going.
requested of 13,538 on October 12th.
the department's request was $13,538. So if there are no other questions or anything, would the board, the budget committee like to take action on this?
I
Can
would
I
make,
have a question?
The one time I don't ask.
what was that?
Mark has,
Oh,
Mark has a
Mark had a
question.
question as to, and I'm sorry, Mark, I forgot to read it off your text message you sent me, but Mark had asked, what happened, on the 4291. My only question was, what happened between 2016, 17 to 18, the budget doubled. So in other words, in 16, the budget was about $8,000.
That was actual year-to-date. The number 8,000 on our sheets is the actual year-to-date, sorry, actual total year for that.
On
He was talking
16.
about the 216 budget.
Last year,
No.
was actually-
What we see on ours is, the column is labeled actual, I need to go back.
It shouldn't say actual, it should say budget.
Yeah, okay.
Just so, I'm sorry, maybe yours is a little.
My, I have an old one then.
You have an old one.
Yeah.
So that's, the budgeted amount in 16 was $8,000, and I think Mark's question is, why is this budget $13,598? And the biggest, I can see the biggest expense, Mark, has been in the maintenance of forestry equipment by the tune of almost $2,500, a little over $2,000. And then the other large increase is in fire suppression and training pay, and that's basically gone up about almost $2,000, just shy of that, $1,800 in that line there. Most of the other lines are pretty consistently across the board. So I believe, the chief's here, but I believe going forward in 17 and 18, we have, the fire department was pulling a lot of the maintenance out of their budget line for equipment maintenance, and they have separated those out between the two departments, and that's the reason why there is a shift in that. And the trend was between 15, 16, and into 17, going from an in-town or a town mechanic to a contracted service or outside sourcing.
I don't think in 16 there was a whole lot of maintenance in this particular department.
There was $75 it was.
Well, but I mean, even
think it
if it
was
was put into the fire, there wasn't a huge amount of dollars in
No,
maintenance.
no, but we did pick it up.
Yeah.
It wasn't a huge
But
one.
we're not talking,
Yeah,
we're not
the fire
talking-
department was picking up not only equipment maintenance, it was also picking up suppression costs, fuel costs, training costs, were all coming out of the fire department budget, and that was one of the things the budget committee was kind of emphasizing, let's see what it truly costs.
Were you able to get that okay, Mark?
I think, thanks. Just, you know, doubling the budget for 1 year and then carrying it forward that way, it just seems a bit extreme, but I understand why.
Okay, so your question's been answered.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So at this point, are we ready to take any action on this? Dave Seguri's shaking his head yes, so. So thus, sir,
I move that we approve the budget for account number 4291 in the amount of, my book here says $1,358.
13,000.
13,000.
$2,538, I'm sorry.
I'll second for 13,538.
okay, I have a motion made by Dave Seguri to approve account number 4291 forestry in the amount of $13,538. Motion has been seconded by Terry. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, any abstentions from the vote? Not hearing any, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passed 6-0. Thank you. Okay, next account number, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Next account is 4520 Recreation. I'm sorry that we're running late.
That's fine, I'm going to stand just because he's more pleasant when I'm standing than if I was sitting.
You are, or he is?
She is,
She is.
yes. So I have a couple things just to pass out, just so you have it. I asked Anita on Monday for the year-to-date for the general fund, so we knew what was left over, and I could put that out if needed to be purchased. So I have that for you, so you have that.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome. And then this is just supplemental, but it's just our programming, projected programming. Just so you have an idea of all the things that we do in a year. Did I give you one, Scott?
No, but is
You probably-
this any different than what you gave me before?
I mean, it's been updated,
Okay.
but, yeah.
For the benefit of the public and for the recorder, Nicole Hunter from the Recreation Department is going to be presenting the budget for us. And the floor is yours.
Okay, so for our budget this year, and I actually, Scott, what is the figure that you have? Remember we were off the last time?
The Board of Selectmen, I don't know, find my, the Board of Selectmen approved on October 19th, a total of $70,862.
Okay.
Which is, that dealt with that whole contract mowing piece.
Right.
Yeah, that's all in there, so it is higher than what you had
Right,
put
'cause
your
it,
number in at. I think you were looking at the increase was about 6,800 or
Yeah.
6,700. And just to kind of cut to the chase to help out time-wise for
Mhm.
Nicole is that we had worked on that through DPW, through getting pricing and quotes. That came in after the budget cycle had already started. We utilized some numbers we had from last year's quotes. They were actually slightly short, so we had to adjust those into various lines, and that speaks to about the $7,000 increase or a little bit more that is in the rec department budget. Really is on the grounds maintenance, mowing, trimming, and fertilizing at the ball fields. And also Nicole has called out in her description also some additional programming, which is a small piece to her increase. You know, all department heads are asked to do due diligence, and Nicole has.
But just quickly, to her credit, she looked at other areas where she could offset some of those programming costs. It came in almost a neutral position except for the mowing piece.
Exactly.
Okay. And have we decided yet where we're going? I'm sorry, I was a little distracted, and somebody may have already answered that.
I don't think they have, well, I don't think they have fully, to answer your question, yes, it has been decided, and there should be cost savings. But
Okay.
as on the 19th, the board, the selectmen did whatever we had at that time, which we did not have this piece, and we approved it with the contract mowing. So this, in theory, you could argue it is overfunded, over budgeted,
All right.
but the select board has not yet had a chance to go back and look at it to that
Do you
effect,
know, is
from the
it-
mowing side.
do you
No,
know-
just quick, it may not be that much overfunded, because I don't know that the full calculation has been completed on it.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be close to a wash, actually.
All right.
It's pretty close to a wash, because we need to keep fertilization in there, and we do not do fertilization in-house. So, we saw a great, response to our doing fertilization on the town grounds, in doing that application, that way. And, going forward, it is like Swen said, virtually a wash, by doing that. Now, does that mean that there'll have to be money shifts, potentially to do that? Because we had pulled out wages out of DPW and then spread them around because of contract services, so there may have to be some line adjustments that end up happening. Whether the board chooses to do that afterwards, they may do that. I'm not sure exactly how they want to do that. We're still in the conditional offer stages.
Okay.
So I think it'd be premature to make any leaps of faith until later on. And the board has the authority, once the budget is approved, in order to make, you know, transfers and justifications based upon that later on if they choose to do so.
And you are correct, just quickly from a philosophical point of view, which I'm not gonna belabor a long time. I favor that once the budget's done, but when the budget committee comes back and looks at, you know, the board of selectmen comes back and look at the operating budget, you know, like first quarter into the year and all that, it may not be aligned on a couple of those things because of this, but you just have a very quick explanation. Remember that.
That'll be in the first
Now,
quarter.
I'm not a big fan of saying you modify the budget after the budget's approved. I think once you've approved it, that's the budget. Unless you have a separate line item that lists those changes separately.
Back to you, Nicole.
Okay, so would you like me to go through each line, or do you have any specific questions that you have on the budget?
What is the desire of the board at this point?
Way too many lines.
Okay.
Just go through the important, what you
So-
think is important, and then if we think, I would suggest she goes through what she thinks important for us to hear, and then if we have any more questions, we would ask those. That would be my.
Is that consensus? Mark, did you have any specific questions for this account, recreation, 4520?
I thought that the cover that the kind of looking, I'm still up here, where the big item that increased is the contract mowing. How much mowing you got for that?
He's talking about the mowing.
Yeah, so Mark, the mowing is based upon a outside sourced contract to do that versus doing it in-house. That potentially may change if in fact we are successful in completing the hiring process on a conditional offer of employment. Although ultimately throughout the town budget, it'll basically just be a wash. So this budget could in fact see a reduction that way, but you would see an increase in public works.
That is my question, Scott. I was wondering if it came out here would be reduced up, so you had a question that.
The bank is picking up.
Yeah.
Does anyone understand what you're saying?
Mike is picking up a premature vote. Mike is picking up a premature vote.
Premature vote, yeah, I don't blame her. But she wants to go home too.
Yeah.
I think he wants to serve on the
She's
budget
been-
committee. I think he wants to serve, she wants to serve on the budget committee.
Nicole has her little one with her, and the little one has been very patient with us.
Yes, raises later.
So go ahead, just walk us through
So,
the
yeah,
ones you want to
so
hit.
the budget, essentially, it's very much the same as it was for 2017. As Scott noted, we did recommend or propose putting in some additional programming funds. In the past, the rec budget has primarily been, you know, operational costs, staffing costs. We put in some funding under postage for the invitations for this senior celebration. And we also proposed putting in a couple programming lines, celebrating Durham Day for family entertainment of $800, and the senior holiday celebration supplies and centerpieces at $300. In order to put that in but still remain in that -1, +1 line, we went through and took out some funding. So infield maintenance, we took out 1,000 from. The water safety training we took out for next year. And a couple other lines, we were able to take out the sports equipment. We took out the replacement bases, which were $300. Assuming we purchase those this year, we will not need to purchase next year. I say assume because in the additional paperwork that I just gave you in terms of what we have left over for 2017, we are still waiting for our final invoice for the portable toilets to come in so that we can pay that. And then additionally, we haven't actually been charged for the contract mowing yet.
You're talking about year-to-date this year?
Yes, yeah. And so I'm just waiting to see what that total is really going to be because I'm a little nervous that it might go over the line, and I just want to make sure we have enough in our budget to cover it. So before we purchase, the basic field drag, things like that. I'm just waiting to see, because our budget is tight for this year. But essentially, the budget itself, is the same. We went through and put exactly what, we projected we would need it for. And the biggest discrepancy was the contract mowing, which, is out of our hands whether or not we do the contract mowing or we have staff to do that.
When you were before the CIP committee, you talked about, I believe it was Primex when they inspected, talked about the need for railings or fencing somewhere. Is that reflected in this budget?
So that is not reflected in this budget. So that would potentially be guardrails down at the ball fields, at that upper parking lot. So as you drive in that first parking lot, there's a slight hill, and as of now, there's like a pole down there. But it would be good to have guardrails up there. This was the first year that had really come to light, and it came about with Highway having to purchase guardrails anyway for Middleton Road, and I think another project, and so they just put us in the bid, they put us in the bid as well to see how much it would cost. And I believe there were 2 different types that you could get, and it was several $1,000s for either. We did not put that in here. We could, but I did my best to keep us within the framework of what we needed to be. We do have some funding already in our CRF line that we think we will be able to utilize and be able to purchase guardrails there, because that funding, there is funding in there for the playground, but there should be additional funding that would allow us to purchase the guardrails as well.
So that would be the additional $7,500 that you had requested?
So
the railings?
So the $7,500 next year. So that was specifically for the playscape, but it turned out that we had already had some additional money in that line that we weren't aware of. So the $7,500 that we, requested and received this year, plus that $7,500 for next year, that would have been the playground. There had already been some additional money in there to start with. That could go towards the guardrails. We weren't unaware that there was money in that.
By clarification, it's a CRF, which is not really related to them.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we have enough money in order to cover
To do
what's
that.
required.
That's a CRF.
What's the status of the sprinkler system and the water pipes then?
That's a great question. We need somebody to come in and really look at that. As you may be aware, it was put in by volunteers, and we don't actually have, or at least we have not been able to find, we as in Recreation and the Highway Department, a plan of those being put in. So really where they are, what they are, etc. I've talked to the staff down at DPW about it. They've done kind of patchwork jobs as needed over the years, but without really knowing the system, they haven't been able to really improve upon it. So we would need somebody to come in and figure out what the system is all about, digging it up. I'm not sure what the cost of that would be. I think in the original plan, when the volunteers put it in, so it's at that lower field, the 2 lower fields, and piping did come up towards the upper field, with the intention that eventually it would be added on to be able to water that field as well. That was well before my time, and I don't have any paperwork on it, so we still need to figure that out.
You might want to talk to past Parks Chair Roy Doherty. He might have been involved
In that,
in that project.
okay,
Because I think it goes back
yeah,
to the early 80s.
okay. Yeah, we just
So
don't have anything on it, so
We have no estimate of what
it's,
you're going to need for funding in the
Yeah.
future for that.
yeah, so even when DPW has done some work on it, they have to dig it up to actually see what's going on there. So somebody else, unless we find plans for it, would have to do that. To really figure it out, and whether or not pieces would need to be replaced, if we could actually build upon what we already have, I'm not sure. At this point, we utilize the sprinkler as we can, and then we also have, they use the spray hose down there as well to water throughout the summer, so.
And that, if that figure, that money, you don't.
It wouldn't be a
have to
year,
pay
I
it.
would imagine that would be a
So that's
capital.
long-term.
Yeah, it would be a
Okay.
long-term project, yeah.
All right.
I was gonna ask a question about, operating budget, and are you gonna need anything from operating budget if you do get to install the ice rink this year, if the weather cooperates? Because I know you got donations for the ice rink, and it's gonna be put up by volunteers, but what else does that entail?
So the community rink, we got a sponsorship from Meredith Village Savings for it, and we're using that funding. Perry Construction is going to build it for us. It's going to be a temporary rink in that it'll be down, put down in fall, be there over winter, and then we'll take it up in the spring. And so they'll be working on that in the next couple of weeks for us. In terms of operational funds, it'll also cover, we're hoping will cover, benches down there and our safety signs. I already talked to Primex about exactly what those need to be and say, because this would be right down in the ball field, it would be accessible to people, at any time really. But at this point, we didn't put anything in the budget in terms of, besides maybe staff labor going and shoveling after a storm or something like that. We didn't put in any additional cost.
So Perry Construction.
Perry Construction
is
will be the
coming
ones
out
who are
of-
gonna come and work, who are gonna build it for us.
Right, but where's the money coming from Perry?
Meredith Village Savings, they
That-
gave us a sponsorship.
And that money pays for everything?
Yep, because it's gonna be a 24x40 rink, and so he'll be constructing that. I met with him actually on Sunday about it. And so for this first year, that'll cover it, and then Meredith Village Savings has already talked to us about giving additional several hundred dollars a year to help maintain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this will come down and will be easy then for the town or for the recreation department to put back up, or will you need to hire
Yeah,
someone?
no, we'll be able to do it. So they're gonna do the initial construction, and he asked that I have whatever volunteers will be taking it up in the spring and putting it down next year there so that they can see exactly what needs to be done. But it's the intent that it would be put up by staff or volunteers.
Maybe make sure that I and the rest of the board knows when you're essentially ready to do that, so
Yeah.
we can send a letter of appreciation to Meredith Savings.
Oh, absolutely, yes. And we are, because they're sponsoring it, on the signs that go down, it'll say sponsored by.
That's fine,
Meredith Village.
I'd like to have the select
Yeah.
board, if assume that they wouldn't object, but I don't know one vote, but, assume that I would like to have a letter of formal appreciation once that's there, once it's in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
If you don't have enough volunteers with you to take it down and put it up, have you talked to the highway department at all as to whether or not they would be able to assist?
I have not talked to them specifically about it, well, not this year. Last year, when we had first gotten the sponsorship, I had been in talks with the former director, because he has actually put up rinks before, and he had voiced support. I have not specifically reached out this year to the staff, since that changed. Yeah.
So that money is currently sitting in the revolving fund?
It's in the revolving fund, yeah.
But it's targeted money?
Yeah, for the ice rink, yeah.
Yes, Scott.
If we're successful in having the plan is to have a facilities and grounds maintainer position, which is a part-time position, year-round, 30 hours a week. The hope is that that person can help support some of these efforts in being able to be the person that might be there with Nicole when Mr. Perry is assembling it to understand, or maybe even if he helps out with numbering it. And I know in the past, it was based on the assembly, so it could be disassembled by, it's screwed together, that's how most of these are put together. So it can be disassembled and then stored. So this person would kind of be that person to record that, be involved in that. There's no doubt, having added volunteers, it might be available to help support that, but have our maintainer person be able to be there as a kind of a town liaison and putting it together and helping out with that support. That'll help take a little bit of a burden off of directly the highway department, even though the maintainer may need to reach out for additional support if in fact the volunteer base may not be available at that given time to do it. So
I suspect you've already looked at it or will be looking at it, but I'd like to make sure you get some good marketing push on once you get that done too, so, like press releases it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Used, it will be used.
Well, we need to advertise, or not
Oh,
advertise.
absolutely,
we need
yeah,
to
we'll
push
be
the
putting in the
marketing.
J Center, we'll be, yeah, and making sure that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay,
Dave Segori, did you have a question?
Yeah, Nicole, have you got a place to store this when it's taken down?
So when it is
Do the
taken
summer.
down, it will need to be stored, that is a great point. So we have that added, you know, the wooden addition to the concession stand. We can move things out of there to be able to put the pieces in there for the summer.
You won't be able to get it all in?
Yeah, because we also have that additional storage shed here at the top, and that has space in it that can be utilized as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah,
it's the right question. It's the
Yeah.
right question.
yeah. I mean, one for, you know, the longevity of it, but also so nobody's climbing on it, you know, safety, all that
When
kind
we
of
get
stuff.
that Zamboni though, Dave, we're gonna end up having to get a double garage.
Okay.
I'm good at ones and huts.
It's sold.
We need a lot of shovels down there.
Don't we have a store?
All right, if there is no other questions, are we ready to?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mark, you have a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just curious, I don't see anything in here about someone revenue and cost. We come to the back though.
I didn't hear the
What
question.
was it?
A revenue in cost?
The what?
A revenue in cost is what he said, I think.
Just tell me what.
There is no revenue in cost, I don't believe, on this one.
There's no
Yeah.
money coming in for the ice rink.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so the only thing, if I understand it, Mark, is it does kind of break up with the speakerphone, but, I think the question was, is there a revenue, that comes in towards, on the rink side of things, like similar to the programming on the, rec revolving, is that correct?
No, I'm sorry. If you can hear me better. I was wondering about summer swim lessons. I don't see them on here anywhere. I know they're up, where do we charge them?
Summer swim lessons.
Yeah,
So summer swim lessons are the staff and any needed supplies specifically comes from the fees associated with signing up a child. So that's all comes from the revolving fund.
Okay,
Actually, what we misunderstood his question was actually a good question. Yeah. How are we receiving the funds from various savings, or is it through the revolving fund?
yeah, I believe it's through the.
It went through the revolving fund, so they, yeah.
So,
It's been there for a while.
Yeah.
ignore the question. Well, not ignore the question, that is the response.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything else, Mark? So the selectmen approved the request of $70,862. The department request was $70,862. Okay, sounds like I've got someone ready to make a motion.
I would make a motion to approve account number 4520, Parks and Recreation, in the amount of $70,862.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion made by Terry to approve account number 4520, Recreation, in the amount of $70,862. It has been seconded by Dave Segori. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to ask if there's any abstentions. Hearing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed 6-0 in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Nicole.
very much.
Before she
Thank
leaves,
little one.
before she leaves, I just wanted to go on the record for 28-hour-a-week recreation director. We are a very fortunate town. Thank you.
Thanks.
Nicole,
Well, job well done.
Yeah.
when you're setting up your litigation, then when you're building your room,
Yeah.
okay?
These materials here are from the
I don't know.
library, they're
What
just
you
asked
use
out
the
there.
material for sure.
These were sent to me. I will tell you that the Board of Selectmen had reviewed their budget, and and approved the budget. There is an increase in their request. The Board of
Since that time.
Selectmen- Since that time, the Board of Selectmen did not have that. And I believe it is in part-time staff wages.
What's the number?
4550.
This account number will be 4550 library. We are being provided new information, and if I understand correctly, it's information that the Board of Selectmen has not seen.
It
I will, I'm
was
sure I'll be in touch
distributed
with
to us,
Mike.
but we did not have a
He's gonna
chance
send
to
me
discuss.
the project details and stuff, so.
All right.
Just call me, if you don't have that number, then I know it's better than me.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you set up, Scott, for PowerPoint? 'Cause
I have, I run up and get the projector. We've been a mad scramble here tonight, so, but I can get it, we can.
No, it's okay. I think it's all right. It was just, you know, some pictures, and things. I think all you folks are pretty familiar
Normally I would
with.
have it running, and as I had told you, I would.
Yeah,
But Swens and myself and Anita have been at a conference all day and we came here
yeah,
on
okay, no, I was
two
just
wheels
asking.
and
I was just asking.
put it together.
Okay, why am I in this one?
Because you're presenting.
I handed out these,
Oh, yes,
and I handed out these.
yes, and the narrative? And the narrative is
Yeah, that's
included in
it.
this, okay.
So they have it all.
Right, the thing is my Excel form does not have the formula, so it didn't come up with the final.
Oh, bottom line?
Yes,
So
see,
if you tell me what changes there are, I can change them on my computer and it'll give you a new bottom line.
See this?
Yeah.
This isn't right.
Yeah. So if you tell me what numbers changed up here, and I assume it's in the part-time wages?
Yeah, and it's right here. It's all correct.
Okay.
This is the updated, it's just
Yeah,
that
I'll
final
plug
line.
it in while you talk to me about
Okay,
things, how's that?
sure.
Is this different than what you just gave us?
No.
No.
The bottom line will explain only because it didn't compute on the formula.
Is this different than the document dated 10/19?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, there's only a couple of minor changes that I had sent out after the trustees met on the 7th. And there were two minor changes. And only one affected the bottom line. So this, Rich, we're going to do a duet tonight, Rich and I. Yeah.
Well, as soon as everyone is settled, I'll let you do introductions, Kathy, and then we will move on, okay? So are we ready? Is everyone on the same page at this point? No, I'm seeing no, so give us just a few more minutes. We are receiving new information that we've not seen, so in fairness. I'd
Yeah,
like
I'm
to
sorry
give-
about that. I sent that out on the 8th for you folks, but.
It's been a pretty busy time.
Kathy, I'll write in here, but I'll send this over to you, email it over to you, so you have the actual. But what it does, the only thing it did is it changed the, like the FICA and.
Yes,
that kind of
yes,
stuff.
and some of that was correct, but some of it wasn't, because we didn't have it.
I'm gonna write it next to it, yeah, I'll just give you a copy of this for
What do
you.
you have for a total on this company? That's different than what we have?
The
Your
total, yeah. So the department total, the department total now becomes 129,756.
Oh, 756.
And where are the differences that you saw that you?
So the differences are in part-time
They have
wages.
690. They have 690. No, we haven't seen
The hours of one of the part-time positions
Excuse
increased
me,
to $500.
I'm sorry, start that again, I lost half of it because we had another conversation.
Yeah, because I missed some numbers, I was trying to get it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott, repeat that last figure, I'm sorry, I didn't
So,
get it.
the bottom line is 129,756, the department requested. And the changes in the lines are at line 10-115, under the assistant, library assistants. You'll see 1, 2, 3, one of the part-time positions. It did have originally it was 400 and some odd hours, and it's increased to 500 hours at $12.50, which changes that to $62.50.
That's on this sheet we have.
Yeah, $62.50, which changes that line to $28,139.
Right.
That's here.
Okay, and then you go down to, all the way down to the bottom, and under FICA, library FICA, it'll change it to 4,241, and Medicare at 992. And that gives you the bottom 129,756, and Kathy, I wrote them up. I don't know if you
I got
did
it.
write it.
Yeah, thanks.
129,726?
129,756. It's about $1,118 or something like that. What was left?
Just quickly, I'm curious of why this wasn't available to the select board when the deadlines were for the budget.
I can answer that.
Okay?
Because the trustees meet once a month. And I changed, as I looked at the coverage at the library, and I realized that I was making a major personal sacrifice to not have the coverage there, and I had presented to you this one particular position at 416 hours.
Right.
So I changed it to 500, but I can't make that change. The trustees need to make that change. And on November 7th, I presented them with that information. They accepted that change, and on November 8th, the next day, I sent the updated information out. So that's why there was a change from what the Board of Selectmen saw.
At this point, Kathy, would you please introduce who you have with you? Because I'm not sure we all know one another, and if we do, I'm sorry for that too, but for the public as well.
Sure.
My name's Rich Leonard, library trustee, live on Miller Road in New Durham. Been a trustee for a few years now, and I'm the treasurer at this point for the trustees.
Bill Meyer, I'm just a former trustee. Bill Kendrick, a trustee.
And the secretary.
Secretary.
Welcome. Okay, Kathy.
Okay, as part of your information, you've got the library overview. I don't think we really need to spend much time on that. I think you folks are pretty aware of the kinds of things we do, the services that we offer, you know, all the different kinds of stuff, the attitude from the public, how, you know, that we're we're a favored department. People enjoy what we do. We get nice comments from people all the time. We have events for all ages. I think really, especially considering the hour, and you guys have been at it for so long, I think if we skip right to the budget narrative, and the narrative is focused on the lines that the trustees have control over. As you are aware, the other lines in the budget are generated by town hall. So if you do want to skip to that, if you don't have any other questions on kind of the programs that we do and kind of the subscriptions that we hold and that kind of thing, we could skip right to the narrative. We have realized savings with the new mini splits, which we're really excited about. We still have something kind of in the wind there, our furnace, which is the original furnace, so it's like 32 years old. And the oil tank, of course, is underground and has been a source of concern from the guy who used to clean our furnaces for many, many years. And one of the things that we had talked about at the time when we put in the mini splits over there was that we would replace that furnace with a propane furnace so that we didn't have to worry about the oil tank. Since then, we've had the company that installed our mini splits come and talk to us. And he came around and he said that, as you know, space needs are a major problem over there. And it was actually John Abbott, because I brought John Abbott, the building inspector, over to look at the library to come up with some way for us to store the tables and the extra chairs. And he said, well, you know, if you get rid of this furnace, you know, you'd have all this room in the boiler room. And I went, God, that'd be fantastic, but how can we do that? We need this backup, because the mini splits don't cover temperatures that go below, you know, whatever, 20 degrees or 0 or, you know, whatever. So when the vendor came over, he's looking around and he said, you know, we could remove this furnace, put in a hyperheat unit, which would then employ your ductwork that's already there, which means also that then we would have our bathrooms heated again, because now they're not, because the furnace never goes on, really. The mini splits have been handling it pretty well, because we've had those mild winter last year. And it would use our existing ductwork. It would get rid of the furnace. We would have room to store the tables and the chairs. And it would save us from really having to seriously consider expansion for another couple of years. It would be fantastic. So that is something that's like playing around.
I think there was some discussion also about moving our existing mini splits over to the town hall.
We don't have to do it this way. We would not have to do it this way. This way, what would happen, I met with Dana after the meeting with you folks.
New information.
Yeah. The thing is, they would stay, and we would just replace the furnace, which we were going to replace it with a new furnace. Now we would replace it with a hyperheat unit. It's up above. The floor space is all cleared. The furnace gets hauled out. Tons of room in the boiler room. Store the extra chairs, which have been a liability, which became such a liability. I was so concerned. I had the highway department come and move the vast majority of them over here to the basement, because it's just too dangerous the way they were piled up. And the tables, which also are very dangerous, you know, lying there in the back hallway.
So that's for future.
Well, that's
requests.
something
that's
that,
not going to
yes.
happen in 2018.
Well, it'd be nice if it did, but it might not. Only because, as I think the CIP people and the budget committee also, and the selectmen are aware, that for several years everybody's been talking about replacing that furnace. But I just wanted to throw that out there, that we could have a really, really good solution, which would mean that some of our space needs would be taken care of, and that would be great, and we're happy about that. Okay. So for our proposed budget, our total salaries would be $68,401, and our operating budget would go down to $2,700. So if we discuss the wages right now, I think you've read this over, maybe not.
We just got this tonight too.
Yeah,
so we had an older version, that, all that information was distributed, so.
It's pretty much exactly the same. I changed the wording of some things in this, so it's, as far as the narrative goes. But the trustees, raised my salary by 20 cents. We raised, our assistants by, a dime. We're assuming that the new hire would probably come in at $12.50, maybe it would be 12. The library substitutes have been working, all this year at $10 an hour, and certainly would deserve a raise of 10 to 25.
So what additional programs are we going to be offering to get for the 500 hours, the increase from 416 to 500?
Right, what the problem has been is that last year, well actually even before last year, we hired someone to take over, to do coverage on Tuesday and Wednesday, and to lead certain classes. And that worked out great, and then that person left on maternity leave. And we expected that person to be able to come right back to her position and carry on as normal. That has not happened. We are eager to keep that person for certain projects and classes and that kind of thing, because she brings a certain skill set that we needed, which is why she was hired. But what that has meant is that we now do not have coverage for those days that she normally would have physically been in the building. Several years ago, the trustees made up their minds that they wanted to have 2 people at all times at the library. We've never actually done that. The Saturday person is still alone. And most other librarians will pale if you say that you are there by yourself. So this was a concern. We were trying to figure out how to work this. And so the original concept was that I said, well, we'll hire someone, but we also know that the regular person, the emerging technologies assistant, is not there physically, but is working from home. So I subtracted all of those hours from this new hire. And then I started thinking about it, and I went, phew, then I don't have physical coverage at the library. So I put some of those hours back in. It's still not exactly, it's not the same amount, but it's a few more. So now what that means is that we've got someone doing some, esoteric skilled work from home and coming in and leading classes and programs. And then we would have a person also covering, so that there would be 2 of us. So that's the reason for that.
So the extra 5, the extra additional hours is to bring in another body, another person?
Yes, to be there.
Okay. And that person will be doing what was already in your programs, or this will add programs to what already exists?
Would it add programs? Not necessarily, it's coverage. One of the things that I want from anybody who comes in as a library assistant is the ability to be able to teach and lead programs of certain kinds. Because that was the thing with the substitutes. We grabbed our substitutes who are extremely personable and wonderful to run the front desk. But it was never our design to have them actually lead programs or do some of the more advanced, they're not going to catalog and that kind of thing. And so what we're finding is that, time-wise, we need not only the physical coverage, but also someone who has been hired to do those kinds of things.
I think we're a little stretched labor-wise on existing programming. And going forward, all indicators are the programming for the library is on the rise. We're spending less on books and more on programming. So that's kind of the logic behind increasing our labor expense for another person. It's basically 10 hours a week for over 50 week period.
If you're spending less on books and more on programming, is that because people are turning to electronic formats that don't
Yes,
result?
look at, you can look at the figures for downloading audiobooks and downloading Kindles. And let me show you I've got this actually for you, just to indicate our overall circulation, which is just always, always on the rise. And one of the reasons is because more people are using our consortium. We pay, well, I don't know whatever we pay, it's listed down there, to belong to the consortium. This is our overall circulation since 2011. And as you can see, it just continues to rise and rise and rise. But you're right, Terry, physically, do I need to purchase as many audiobooks to actually be physically in the library to serve the patrons? I do not, because people are downloading.
So circulation means how many books are taken?
And audio
downloaded,
books, yes,
and
exactly. And in the overview, folks, is it gives you the number of, it gives you the number of the consortium. Let me just reference that for you. Here it is. Total circulation, blah, blah. Ebooks and audiobooks downloaded from our consortium by patrons are surging in number. Since January, this is for 2017, the figure is 2,157. Last year also had a big jump, and at this point it was 1,319. So you can see it's just like climbing. And because of that, we continue to pay for membership in the consortium, but I don't necessarily have to buy as many physical items. And we're still covering, you know, the needs of our patrons.
Okay, any other questions about the salary line items? Mark, do you have any questions?
Mark's no longer with you and he has no questions. He's
Oh.
on the airplane and
He's on his plane, okay. We did have a member that was participating by phone,
Mark,
and I didn't realize he had left us. Okay. All right, I'm not hearing any questions, Kathy, so go ahead on to the next.
Oh, okay. All right, so then our operating budget, which is less than last year. And here we are, our books and subscriptions. Again, I took another 1,000 out of that, just as I did last year. And we're doing okay. We're fine with that. The amount, the 11,900, includes $643 for the consortium, $200 for our Ancestry.com license. Subscriptions to the Union Leader and the Granite State News are $171 and $68 respectively. We pay $128 for the movie license. And then, of course, the new books and the audiobooks are included in this figure as well.
How much has been spent in sub-account 10028 to date?
I don't have a line item number.
That's the book, that's this one that we're looking at, books and
Books and
subscriptions.
subscriptions, to date, we're at $8,788.13.
8,700?
$88.13.
That's what's spent to date on that.
Yes, that's correct. That's through 11/9. And I haven't paid any more bills since then, so that would be accurate.
Building maintenance, we just, you know, for safety's sake, we keep it 1,500 because who knows what could happen. And also our alarm system is taken out of that, so that's $180 per year for the alarm system that's put in that
So
line.
line 651 is no longer used?
Sorry?
You have a library alarm line at 651?
It's a different alarm, Terry.
there's a fire alarm.
That's the
and
fire.
They have a
So
burglar alarm.
651 is the fire alarm?
Yeah.
But there's been no bills to date?
Probably.
Again, this is town hall, I don't
don't know.
I can't remember if, I don't know if that was.
Yeah, they'd be able to look through it.
Are we looking at 10,651?
Yes.
trustees, these are the only ones that the trustees deal with, these that are in the narrative, so. Equipment maintenance, we're keeping at the $1,000. Quite often we have minor things from, you know, Spalding Hill is over and, you know, we're going to need to add some more memory to the front desk office. I'm always a little worried about our copier, which is, you know, every year I go, our copier is old. It keeps getting older. So, you know, it's wise to have some money in there. You can see we jumped our patron programming just to kind of indicate what the figures truly are. We average 10 programs a month. A lot of them are free or don't cost a lot to produce. Some of them do. We pay instructors sometimes we don't. We have supplies. Sometimes we ask people to contribute towards materials. Sometimes we don't.
Nothing under arms has come in yet.
The dues, fees, membership, that's the American Library Association. The library office supplies, we've dropped to $2,000. That includes things such as toner, copy paper, book covering and labeling, restroom supplies, which we go through very quickly. Remember, we've got, you know, anywhere from 30 to 90 people in the library on a day, and they all seem to have to go to the bathroom when they come. So we take care of all of that. But we have state contract prices now for much of that, and so we're going to start seeing, you know, some reductions in those costs. So it'll be fun to be able to track this full year and into next to see. And I think, you know, I think we'll be able to realize some savings there. Actually, that's not even, I mean, 2,000 really isn't very much. Professional development, we dropped that because most of the things we go to cost like $20, or they're free, or they're $5. And there are a lot of them out there that we can continue doing that. We also use this line for our mileage when people do go to any of these kinds of conferences or workshops. This particular year we trained it because one of the things I went to was in Vermont. And I've gone to several in Hooksett, and that I didn't even submit for the ones in Concord. But I think 200 should probably, you know, cover us for next year. So that's us in a nutshell, pretty much.
You folks have a number for programming that we've spent to date? $3,487.
We don't have anything.
Yeah, we sent you this.
Yeah,
All I have is this.
Kathy requested.
Patron
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
That's what they're looking at.
0761. And
Uh,
today,
Yeah,
Date?
to date.
I didn't hear it, I'm sorry. So for programming.
For
we spent-
programming,
Yeah,
our
it's
two
down
biggest
here.
expenses on our side are books and subscriptions, which I told you was 87, 88.
Mhm.
And the other one is programming, which is about 3,500. It's 3,487.10.
So far.
So far, yeah. So, I mean, it just gives you a comparison. That's the bulk of what I write checks for.
Wow.
And I appreciate having a look at this. Thank you very much for accommodating my request. I appreciate that.
You did get it, right?
Absolutely, we
Okay,
did,
yeah.
yes. As soon as Scott got it, it was distributed,
Very
so
good.
thank you.
Where,
Absolutely.
what are you referring to? This?
Yes. I think, well, no, let me see what you held up again, please, I'm sorry. No, it looks like this.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah, but just
same thing.
You know what it is?
give it straight out.
Total
Okay,
is 4464 at the
smaller
bottom?
Yep.
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
Yeah, since I took over as treasurer, I've been trying to categorize everything as best as I can, both on the income side. We now categorize, again, it's not a whole lot of dollars, but like book sales, how many copies separated out from facts, library cards, et cetera. So that had always been lumped into just a number before, so now we can kind of see, we can track it. I also go back and itemize or categorize our credit card, which before was just a huge, a lump sum. So we now do each line, whether it's for programming, books, or office supplies. It typically doesn't vary too much from those categories. So to the best of my ability, I separated out everything and assigned a lot of different categories. Like bills and utilities. We don't pay much in utilities, but we do pay an annual fee for the website. So I put that on the internet.
Every 2 years, yeah.
Security, which is the alarm system, Simply Safe, we pay for that on a monthly basis, so I included that. So that's it in a nutshell.
I think that answers one of my questions, and just follow up if you answer yes, that answers the question. I have a follow up to it. One of the questions: what other funding sources do you have besides what the town provides? And I know there's miscellaneous grants for various types of programs.
Sure.
Usually those are smaller grants. I think you don't get, 50.
Yeah, the only income I've seen is what's listed here. We do have $1,000 trust income.
Right.
That's called it's anonymous. That's what they want it to be. So that goes into the trustees account. The other income that's shown on here was $2,175 for a grant.
What?
$2,175 for a grant that we received recently, which will be matched to a certain degree by the trustees account, and also I believe there's some money coming from the Friends, and that's going to meet the requirements of that particular grant.
Right.
So, but other income, that's it.
Yeah. This isn't my second question, which I will give you shortly, but you show the 15,073 from the town of Durham. What is that?
That's our operating budget. We get it in installments.
Right, that's the...
We get it in installments.
Right.
So there's still some money.
Yes, there's still coming.
Right,
There's like 100 and some odd thousand, right?
No, the
No,
operating
no.
budget.
Just the
That's one section.
That's
Right,
the 21,000.
Yeah, that's for the 12,900.
That's showing up as income, because I come over and get a check and I make...
I mean, we show 12,900 as the budget amount, right? Or you show it?
Yeah.
Or no, sorry, 21,050.
Operating is
21,050.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna say,
So,
I don't think so.
I'm just reading one line item.
21.
Yeah,
And the total
so
amount.
that's what that is,
So
yeah,
what
that's
that
just
is.
our operating budget, but it does come to us in installments.
Actually, those both answer the second, related to second question.
According to what?
Oh, I'm sorry. Terry, I apologize. This is, I think, the first time we've seen this. That is, in several years.
For
So
some of these people,
first of all, I
this
wanna
is the
thank you
first
for
time
that
we have seen
information.
this kind of detail.
Yeah, Kathy asked
So
for
that's
it.
why
Yeah,
I'm
I
grateful.
want to thank you for that information, because I think we've asked for it
I've never gotten
sporadically, not routinely, but,
I have to
This is
experiment
awesome,
with
so
it a little
appreciate
bit
that.
to get it right, but
okay.
it's accurate. Some of my categories, I think I could, finesse a little bit better, but it's,
Well, the uncategorized expenses, it's 15, or is?
No, it's
total?
59165.
Okay, this is just the $600, yeah.
Yeah, it's uncategorized.
Okay.
The
My eyesight
number,
at this time of night may not be as clear as it should.
it totals up,
Yeah, it's 15, yeah.
yeah.
I tried to take a ruler here, but I couldn't.
I've been using the edge of the paper, the same thing. I'm like, oh.
Okay, that answers my second.
I have two questions.
Yes,
One, so when you charge for something, it's basically supplies. So if someone does pottery or someone does painting, whatever, that is only goes to what it costs to
Yes,
run the
it's the
program.
paint nights is when they started it, because they were very, very popular, but you're buying canvas and paint
So you
and that kind of thing, and so we do ask. And it's like $5, and it's a donation. I mean, if you don't have it or you don't, whatever. Some people pay more, some people pay less. But generally, it's always for the paint nights that we do. Most of the things we try very, very hard to keep, free, but it is true, some things,
You have to
get
buy it.
expensive,
Yeah.
sure.
So my other question was, because I think I missed this or I misinterpreted, patron programming. You have the 2017 request was 2,900, so it went up to 3,000.
Yeah.
And Rich said, how much have you spent to date?
Almost
On-
35.
On programming on line 60.
$3,487.10.
Okay, all right, so that's why you knew you needed to
Yeah.
get higher. Yeah, I wasn't sure what he had said.
We've
so.
expanded the program.
Right, right, there's certainly plenty of programs going on there. Plenty,
On
plenty.
the back page, you're asking for $200 for dues, fees, and memberships,
Yeah, that's for the American,
but
what
according to this, you've spent almost $600. Are you gonna be not doing certain things, or are there other
Wait,
funding?
what do you mean? Wait, Terry, wait.
Yeah, the dues and member fees are for other.
Shows one
That's
fifty, I
for,
think.
that's different, yeah, that's
Shows one
that's
fifty.
dues, not subscriptions, are you?
You got the
My
same,
lines
that's
are
what I
crooked.
said, you know, this is where I use, okay, that's how it is.
Okay, that was easy.
I guess, let me double check to make sure all my lines are crooked.
Okay.
But you're able to take from some of the income that you have here to help cover some of the additional expenses that you're not asking
Yes,
to be part of the operating budget
Correct.
request.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
So I just wanted to ask a follow-up, or you're doing your numbers, if I may.
Yeah.
Because I just want to make sure that I understand correctly. You were saying that there are sometimes user fees that are collected for certain programs, and it's to cover the expense of materials. Is that donated directly to whoever's doing the program, or does that go through your system and pays you back for the
It
purchase?
goes through our system and pays us back. Well, I guess.
And that comes
Yeah.
up as income?
Actually,
It's-
I give it to
it's-
him.
yeah.
Pass the buck.
I'm just curious, that's all.
Probably, it's probably under miscellaneous
Okay.
income. And that shows $511.80.
Mhm.
that actually is related to my second question, which I didn't.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me about that.
Which was.
Which
priority
offsets some of the
operating
materials
funds
we
from those
purchased.
sources that the library employees get, which I think is related to what you're saying.
I guess my question might be more for Scott than for you folks, but it has to do with the 4550-10-330. There's a new building maintenance line, which a couple of years ago we had successfully gotten away with so that we only had one building maintenance.
Yeah, it's the mowing, and it went up a
You've
lot.
only spent $525 on mowing,
Yeah, we haven't gotten a bill.
and is asking, is there more bills due?
Actually, that's fertilization. We've only been billed for fertilization, no mowing.
Okay,
Yes,
so
there
there's
are more
still
bills
mowing to
due.
come in?
Yes, there's
Yes.
more bills
Yes.
due,
Okay.
yeah.
Matter of fact, while I was sitting here, I wasn't doing any great texting, but I was sending Karen another message to get back on the bloodhound trail of our contract mower to continue to beg him for an invoice.
I've never understood how a business runs that way.
Yeah, this figure actually is incorrect anyway.
Just my
I think for
eyes.
this year it was 1,000.
Well, I'm just-
Yeah, and then this coming year, it's 1,550.
I was
Yeah,
just, I'm looking
that's
at you
right.
asking for 1550 and not having spent it, I'm thinking, well,
Yeah,
whenever I
right.
get something like mowing, that bill's there before the grass is even finished.
No,
I
there's
think.
The board,
still-
just
yeah,
quickly,
there's
the board of
still-
selectmen actually approved a lower figure earlier than what I gave you, but then Scott came with some additional mowing information, and then we did revise it up to accommodate the extra mowing. So the number I gave you is the final number, but there was an earlier number that didn't have the full mowing on it.
So the new corrected request from the department is 129756?
That's with all the
Okay.
FICA and the Medicare corrected, yeah.
Okay. And I also appreciate this, I've been asking for it, I think, for like 8 years.
You're welcome.
All right, any other questions or
I-
comments?
I'll make the point which I implied before, but it won't interfere with any decision I would make on it. But I'd like to see the budget deadline as the budget deadline, and to be fair to the select board as well as the budget committee, you play the what ifs another budget, unless it's an emergency, obviously.
Then you're gonna have to make sure you schedule it after the trustees meet.
The trustees knew it well ahead.
Well, I think the trustees could accommodate you in the
Yeah, I know, I
future,
understand.
we can
Yeah.
Yeah.
just.
I don't mean it as an overly negative, I'm just saying, that was a learning idea here.
Right,
Yeah.
and also, of course, last year, we didn't even go before the Board of Selectmen because the trustees did their own budget, so I wasn't even sure that I even was going to go before the
We had a
Board of
budget
Selectmen.
that somebody presented, it might have been Scott, or, I don't remember, somebody presented, maybe it was Carter, if I remember. But anyway, wasn't you, but
I don't think the select board, for the majority of the select board,
that's also a
Yeah,
situation.
that's, we don't wanna relive
Yeah.
history.
The selectmen can have their issues, we've got our own issues.
No,
But anyway,
Kathy, you're
just-
right, we didn't go first.
No, we
No,
didn't.
it was,
budget committee on
Yes,
well, I
exactly.
think the TA presented it at the time. No?
Not the
No.
budget committee.
No, because the selectmen really had no input on the trustees' budget, so, but whatever.
They have,
We came as a courtesy and, you know, it was nice to talk to everybody.
the selectmen have
the
input
selectmen
on the
not quite
bottom
accurate.
line.
The
Not
selectmen
quite
don't, I
accurate.
mean, what happened this year was, I mean, it's kind of a courtesy type of thing.
Yeah, it's fine,
It's a vetting process, and
Sure.
people discuss and conversation, and,
sure,
you know, you might carry something back, you know,
exactly.
to the trustees, and the trustees will
Anyway,
be prepared.
as a point, and again, just a learning kind of thing.
okay. So are we ready to take action on the, oh, Terry, you
No,
have?
I'm ready to make a motion if
Oh,
if
okay,
there's.
I thought you had another question,
No.
and I overlooked.
Her fingers up.
No, I didn't write an okay on one of them, but
Joyce's good questions, I learned from them.
I think we all do, Ellen, no matter how long we serve, there's always a learning opportunity. All right, Terry, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve account number 4550 library and a bottom line figure of $129,756.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion that's been made by Terry to approve account number 4550 library in the amount of $129,756, and it has been seconded by Ellen. We've had a lot of discussion, but I will ask again if there's any additional questions or discussion. Seeing none, I'm going to ask if there's any abstentions from the vote. Seeing none, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Because Mark has left us now, I think my
Yeah.
number is 500 in favor.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
thank you, folks. Oh, thank you. What did you do with it?
We need to keep going on with our meeting, we have a curfew, so thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
All right, the next item of business is our next meeting agenda review. The document that I have in front of me, we are scheduled to review, oh no, what an awful person. Town historian account has been changed to 4589 now?
Not
No.
town historian.
No,
Historian's
okay.
not changed.
Same.
I'm confused, yeah, town historian is 4583, thank you.
I heard that was December 6th, did that change?
That's our next meeting, right? December
No, I
6th?
thought we could have one
2
more.
weeks away.
We have one more in
November
November.
29, I think it's on the back. Sorry, Kathy.
Says we're going to
Thanksgiving,
adjourn.
that means the night before Thanksgiving.
Is it on the back page?
Oh, it's way down here. Way down here, I'm sorry.
When is
They're really trying me now.
So that's not on the agenda, right?
I'm gonna start over. The next item, agendas, the next accounts to be reviewed at our next meeting, which is November 29th at 6 PM. 4909, anticipated revenues and tax.
Really?
Right.
I'll make a suggestion to postpone it, but go ahead.
Okay, 4199, other general government. 4711, principal, long-term bonds and notes. And then 4721, interest in long-term bonds and notes. 4723, interest on TAN, tax anticipated note. 4915, capital reserves.
The next meeting? August?
11/29.
Yeah, they're all quick items really.
Boring.
That one
4916.
will not be.
Only the quick items.
4916 expendable trust, 4902 and 4903 capital outlay in equipment and improvements other than buildings.
Do we also have 4901, or is there nothing in?
And 4901 land and improvements is there, yeah.
Did you say 4909 also? or not?
Yes, I did, and did you say that should be postponed?
Well, yeah, well, sorry, we had that earlier. You have the benefit of knowing what we went through. In fact, we started actually the meeting before, which you may also know. The, 47, 11, 21, 23 are, 5 minutes each at most, probably. Because they're very straightforward. The capital one is going to be, I think, the difficult one. Not so much because the information isn't there, I think it's just some interesting decisions that have to be made from as we well know from our discussions. The question is, can you do that all in one session, or do you need to split it? I'm recommending you wait until all the capital stuff is done before you consider the revenues. Now, if you do them all in one night, I don't know how you take them, but again, just suggestions from what we went through our
And
discussions.
it doesn't matter if we don't get through those, and because there's no one here sitting reporting on them. So in other words, we go as far as we can. And
We're here.
But what I mean is just us, basically, so it's not like we've got somebody presenting and we gotta get through
For
it.
me, logically though, I wouldn't be looking at capital reserve funds until I had heard from all of the other accounts. Based on the capital improvement committee work, there are possibilities that the Farmstead might be discussing a capital reserve fund. It's possible that the meeting house, which doesn't even appear on this list to be reviewed at all, unless I'm blind, the meeting house,
Yeah,
they might be asking.
that's why I was surprised. I thought the historian, meeting house, Woody Farm said all that would be before
The
CRS and all
meeting
that.
house is underneath the 4589. That is the title that lists,
Is that a new placement under there?
Yes.
not for the meeting house. The booty house was.
Booty house
Woody
is
Farm
put
said
under
it's different.
Yeah,
But
but 4589 is, it holds the meeting
Did you call
house.
4589 off on your list?
No, I did not.
Okay.
This is a side discussion.
Yeah.
Because she was referencing to the capital reserve.
I didn't see it, and it's like, I
Well,
wasn't
just to
quite
kind of
aware.
clarify, maybe we look at it from a different angle. The only operating pieces that we have left, and I haven't verified, are the 4583 and 4589s. Is that the only two operating related? No, you still have health agents, you still have other agencies, I should say.
We got conservation.
Yeah, conservation.
Planning, zoning, ethics.
I might suggest you work those before the capital and revenue, but I don't know if that's possible based on how you've arranged for other presenters.
So the Hearts and Flowers folks,
Coming.
they're coming, and I believe.
Your terminology is for other agencies, I assume?
Other
Okay.
agencies.
Scout.
Other agencies. No, well, that's
Hearts
what
and
they call it.
Flowers.
Hearts and Flowers, it's good things.
They're coming when?
I believe 29th, I just,
Okay.
when Anita, she's went up to get the whole punch and put it.
Well, that's
in
good,
the
so it seems like
And bring that
we
back.
would be doing all this
So-
first.
What about the possibility, since other agencies might be coming, is on the 29th, we review everything that was supposed to be done on 12/6, and on 12/6, we review what we'd be looking at on, what's scheduled for the 29th, and that would put all of the operational budgets
Right.
ahead of capital.
I would suggest that if it's okay, but obviously you need to.
And
do
makes
it.
sense to
brain
me, mine too.
But it would just be easier to say all the operational stuff
Exactly,
done.
I agree.
I will tell you that capital is gonna be difficult.
Here.
Yeah, that's fine. I can tell you that the other stuff that is, yeah, if you wanted to flip-flop them, type of thing, yeah, that certainly would work out.
I'm just
To
suggesting.
give you time to digest, I have this stuff from last night, printed out.
Well, we wanna make sure,
We should get that anyway.
Yeah.
make sure we're aligned with
So-
it, we know, so.
So we should go through what accounts we're gonna look at for next week on the 29th, November 29th. Based on the discussion and what's available, I guess now we will be looking at town historian, 4583. We We'll be looking at cemeteries, 4195. We will be looking at 4589. There's other cultural and recreation, which is the meeting house and the booty house are in those accounts.
Woody Farmstead.
Thank you.
You of all people.
Interchange, right.
Sorry. Sorry about that.
Some habits are hard to break.
Sorry about that.
The other account is conservation, 4612. Milfoil, 4909. Planning board, 4191.
49 what?
91. In zoning, 4192. Ethics, 4130-30. And the Booty Farmstead had been moved, so.
You already
That
covered
makes
that.
sense to do it that way. And,
Did you have 4415 there, other agencies?
oh,
That's something we postponed if you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
Yeah,
before.
and that would be
We did schedule it for the 29th, right? The other agencies, the folks that you called,
29.
29th. So they-
Good, that sounds like a plan.
I would suggest you do it that way because
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
At a previous meeting, when we were talking about other agencies, I had made the comment that previously, we had been told that if we didn't fund the X sum amount, the agencies, they would only provide services for skilled nursing visits. And you questioned that. I did go back and I found the letter. It was from the Rochester District Visiting Nurse, which is now Cornerstone. And they stated, we continue our practice of not accepting uninsured or Medicaid patients in communities that do not contribute to the agency.
What year was that?
That was in 2012, and that was for FY13 budget. For the FY14 budget, there was another letter from the same agency, in which they said, we do not refuse care to those in your community requiring skilled care based on the lack of adequate coverage.
So they do cover.
Yeah,
They
that's
cover
what I
skilled.
remember, yeah.
They do not cover Medicaid or uninsured. That would also include home health. It would be nursing, PT, OT, speech.
I think there was some, I'll use the term due diligence to see if there could be other funding source for this, and Kathy, I think you were gonna, either you or Scott or somebody was gonna step into that. I'm hoping that, another 2 weeks may be able to supply that information.
Several years ago, I did do some research, and I can't tell you the exact years, but I think it was like the 70s and the 80s. The the sums that were paid towards home health agencies came from one of the Shirley
Right, the one that's for the poor.
reserve funds or
Yeah.
kind of a trust fund. And my research showed that eventually they stopped doing it because they were concerned about emptying the fund. But based on my reading of the will was set up to help
Do that.
do that. So,
Right, and the fund's got some pretty good money in it now to pay this pittance, really, it's not that much money.
So that's, for me, that's kind of why, not look at it too many times, I don't want to get it changes the whole dynamics. pretty much.
And you said that if that was explored and that was determined,
Changes the whole dynamic.
that information has been found, it's been researched, and it's been provided to Scott, and I'm sure that we'll be getting it in due time.
Again, this is part of the reason why, the select board may have to go back on it, but this is part of the reason why I'm suggesting revenues not be covered until you finish all the other stuff, because you'd want to add that to your revenue totals. We have not yet done that, Scott, by the way. So we may have to go back, because we didn't know what you just described.
that's very
Confirmed until you've not done that. So we need just to work through whatever that's going to be, and then go back to the select board and.
Yeah, I gotta go back and double check, because I think that might have been one that has to be a vote
Yeah,
town meeting.
it's the Shirley Timber
A vote of-
Trust.
town meeting.
It's called the Shirley Timber Trust,
Yeah.
and
That's
that,
for the town's poor.
that is one that has to go before the voters at town meeting
To expend any.
to expend any of it. That is specific in that language, and that is the one I have seen through all the years of reviewing our past town reports that has come up, and that supported those agencies. There was a challenge made by the trustee of trust funds as to whether they could pay directly to organizations like visiting nurses, and the challenge came back that it was appropriate to expend funds directly to organizations
For the
like
purpose-
that,
for the purpose
for
of
that
this.
purpose.
For me, that changes the whole
Yeah,
dynamic
they
of the
don't have to
conversation.
pay the money directly to individuals, they can pay it to
It can
groups.
be, yeah.
So in that situation, I believe what would end up happening, since there has to be a vote at town meeting, then there would be
A separate warrant
a
article.
separate warrant article that would list these agencies as an expenditure, and also at the same time, just like we do with our roads, and to authorize.
Describe how, and it would have to be zero tax
So,
impact in this
so
case.
technically,
It would come out of the,
it could come out of your operating budget. The difficulty is, and this is where you wanna come to grasp with it, is that whether or not, if in fact it failed, you know, some people, you keep it in there, I mean, it may not get spent, so it gets rolled back in under your, unreserved fund balance in the following year. So I wouldn't forecast it as revenue, and I would, my recommendation would be as a safety net, depending on what the vote is of your group, I would recommend you keep it in your budget. If in fact you feel that it should be funded because of your beliefs, and that would be a vote.
That's
you
what-
know,
We will
because there
differ,
was-
we will differ, yeah.
Yeah,
I
because
don't
there's a,
imagine the town would look that down either.
If
I
it's
never
paid
try, I never guess, try and
directly
guess
to
what a town will
the
vote.
agency,
Yeah, but we show,
it
the
never
key, the
shows
key,
revenue anyway to the
the whole key conversation is zero tax rate impact.
The thing is that there's more than one fund with potential to be used, because there is not going to be enough funds in that Shirley Trust Fund, I don't believe, to cover all of our desires for the Hartford Flowers.
But there's only about $8,000, isn't it, if I remember correctly? It's not a lot of
I
money.
don't remember.
Yeah, it's not a lot of money.
And I
think
think
it
you
was
also
six.
have to read the language of the will that authorizes that particular fund.
He has all of that, he has all of
Yeah,
that.
but
It's not a whole lot of
it
money.
might not automatically cover some of the others in that account.
I mean, we'll have that conversation.
Yeah.
Again, these are the
We need
reasons
to
why,
look at all the
I'm-
language.
So
these
it
are
might not
the
cover the
CR,
kids
but
when you
why I'm
send to
suggesting
you,
you
might
do
not
revenues
cover that.
last.
Might not cover cap. I'd have to go back and read the language.
The language doesn't say that, Terry, but we
I
have
know.
other funding sources that could help cover children programs. and-
Which may not require town vote, is what you're saying.
Well, most of those are like
Correct.
Smitty's fund for
But
recreation.
Scott does have all of that, and there's no sense for us to sit
Right.
here and keep
We'll
going
have to
on and
wait
on
till it
about
gets
it.
it organized
That's
and-
right, so
Well, then, would you like a motion?
Yours.
if there is nothing else new and nothing else, we're meeting again next week on the 29th at 6.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
You can meet the night before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
You won't have a quorum.
How many are you gonna hire?
it's not scheduled.
Are you sure it's mine?
The 29th.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
I don't need any more paper, thank you.
Move to adjourn. Who's second?
All in
Yep.
favor?
You second? Okay.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
We're adjourned, thank you.
Aye, right?
Bill Kendrick, he is.
He's a trustee.
Trustee.
Library
The Entremont is too, I believe, right?
Hmm?
Is the Entremont a trustee too?
No, he's
for
on
Parks and
he's
Rec.
on recreation.
He's a,
Bill-
because he was here. He just-
Yeah. When, if you had given out any of
Who
your,
else was
Want to
here?
get the, and I don't know if you have that.
We're adjourned at 9:15.